Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Hello, everybody. How are you all doing today? Are you as excited as I am? I'm pretty excited. Pretty excited. We can quickly recap last night's election results. Womp womp, womp womp. Didn't happen. Manitoba wasn't ready to be the center of history for this moment in time. But Calgary, Heritage, July 24th, Kelly Lorenz, another shot. So if you're still holding on to that hope that we can get some new voices into the House right away during this by-election season, Calgary, Heritage, Kelly Lorenz, I'll be there. I'll help them. Still independent. I haven't joined any other parties or anything like that, but happy to see some new voices get in there. And it would be great to see something other than a blue or red get up in there. And I'm sure Randy will have something to say about that as well. He is here. I can see his chair right now. He's gone to see if he can do something about the internet. It's a little bit wonky. So we might have some choppy audio and video. And if that's the case, we will just maybe drop the video and try with just audio. But we're going to do what we can to get at least Randy's messages to you. So we'll be able to do the interview. So let me go ahead and do some of these chats, Sir Patch. Good afternoon, Prairie. Are you used to typing afternoon now? It used to be good morning. And I don't even have a coffee here. It feels just so weird doing these afternoon ones, but I'm glad that we're able to do them. And I just saw Randy jump off, so I think they're redoing their connection. So we'll be good. And welcome from Randy's channel on Facebook and YouTube. I do see that there's viewers. There's 6 people from Randy's YouTube, and there is 18 people from Randy's Facebook. So thank you all very much for joining and checking out what's going on with this interview. If you can do me a favor, you can find me as Jason Lavigne MP all over the place. MP for Member of Parliament. I'm an independent candidate, and us independents need to stick together. So if you're on Facebook and YouTube, come and give me a follow as well. Give me a subscribe as well. Come and give me some likes as well. Of course, give Randy them first, because that's where you are and you're enjoying that. But we got to cross our streams like Ghostbusters today. So we are now broadcasting to 10 different places today. 10 platforms. So we need to get this message out. And thank you very much, Randy, and your followers for joining us as well. He's still getting himself ready, so we'll continue with our intro. But wow, look at you. Randy, Facebook is a really large group. That's exciting. That's exciting. Look at you guys. Hello, everybody from Facebook. And then Padge. Hey, Prairie, how's your day going so far? So Prairie's out of Manitoba for those that are just joining us. And yeah, it's hot again and just chilling. Which is it? Is it hot or is it chilling? Prairie, we're about truth on this channel. Are you hot or chilling? Thank you very much. And then Prairie actually followed up with, I've got a few good storms as well. Lots of hail damage to vehicles and homes with vinyl siding. Prairie, when I lived in Manitoba, I lived in Winnipeg for like my high school years, basically in my high school years. And yeah, we had some major hailstorms there. And you remember like all the cars outside in the parking lot just got destroyed. Yeah, they have lots of weather there. And of course, the blizzards. And I'm sure you've had your fair share too there, Prairie. Hello from Facebook, Dila Do. That's a nice name. And hello from her. Hey, Tammy, thanks for the conversations on Twitter today. It's nice to catch up with you. I really enjoy chatting with you. And yeah, I think that little halo effect was for a reason there, young lady. But appreciate you reaching out. Hey, James. Oi, daytime stream. Ahoy, daytime stream. Yeah, we're going to keep bringing you everybody that we can. And I have found that the audience is more accommodating for a late afternoon than very early. And also the guests are. Usually, not everybody's an early bird, but everybody's an afternoon bird. So we'll catch everybody. Right, James? Padge says hello to Tammy and Dila Do. You're awesome. Azario's here. Evening, folks. Azario, thanks for the panel discussions yesterday. You had some awesome questions for Kelly Lorenz, and thanks a lot for taking over the hosting. Well, I kind of took off for a little bit of dinner, but thanks a lot there, Azario. That was a lot of fun last night. Hello, Debbie. This tells me you're coming from Randy's channel. So thank you very much for chatting on Randy's side as well. And it's very cool that these chats can come in here. Absolutely. Canada cannot continue to pay the price for what Uniparty has done for years. They're all compromised by foreigners. Yeah, the China stuff and all that. We're going to get into what we can get into on this particular interview. We do have some restrictions, and we'll respect the law. We may be independent, but we do still respect the law. We may not like the law. We may want to try and get in there to change the law, but we still respect it. We got, oh my gosh, Prairie, you got a lot going here. James, hello. Hello. I'm going to just say hello, Reed. You don't mess with this Facebook people. No kidding. Yeah, his Facebook people is quite the group. It's amazing to see you all here. For those of you who don't know me, I have a speech impediment, so I work on certain words, and I can't say that first name. Austininator. I tried there, bud. Hey, Wilma Parks. Hello from PEI. So very far east, and we're going to have some people from BC as well. So coast to coast. And Randy, it looks like you're doing good over there, and I'll be able to bring you on in about 3 minutes, and then we'll be good to go. Hey, Robin, nice to meet you too. My nerd. Hot over here in St. Louis, Michigan, 82 degrees. So wow. So we have American viewers as well. So Ron Paul type of viewers. You guys like independent politicians, people that know how to fight for the people, not with the party, no whipping going on. And hey, Robin, let me know, in the US, do they have whips as well? In Canada, we have a political whip, and this is the person that makes the elected officials do what the party wants. Do you have that as well? I don't recall. You may have another term, but we certainly have one called a whip here. Hey, John, I heard you were a chatty guy last night. You got lots of things to say last night, so I'm glad to see that, and keep doing that. That's amazing. Good evening, Jace. Good evening, Yellowhead Yacht Club. And then we got listening from Alberta. Right on. So whereabouts in Alberta are you? I'm up by Breton, which is just west of Edmonton, close to Drayton Valley, where a lot of big fires were as well. Everybody's okay. But where are you in Alberta? Thank you very much for joining us. And hey, look, I got it right. So Austinator Reed, you got that right. Nice to meet you, bud. And then James, Uniparty, LOL. Did anyone else see Mulrooney say Justin Trudeau will be remembered for his leadership and not his scandals? Laughing my butt off. Holy, really? Mulrooney said that? Really? Did he get dropped? Like, what happened? Maybe Randy will know. I don't know what happened with him there. Hi, Prairie. Cool. Thank you very much. And then listening from Edson, Alberta. All right, so Patsy, let's talk. You're in my riding. Do you like independent candidates? I'm your independent candidate for Yellowhead. Edson is my riding. So Patsy, let me know what you think, and go jump on my Facebook as well and give me a follow as well, because we need to grow the reach here in Yellowhead. Yellowhead riding. And yeah, nice to see you here, Patsy. All right, folks. Well, that's the end of the chat. So let's go ahead and bring him in early. He looks like he's ready to go. And let's give this a shot. Hello, Randy. How are you?
I'm fine and dandy. Is things a little bit better? I had some technical difficulty. I'm not sure if they're corrected or not, Jason.
Well, you sound very dandy, Randy. You sound dandy. No, nice to see you. So you're at Scuttlebug? Is that what it's called? Scuttlebug? Scuttlebutt.
I'm sitting on the front porch, enjoying a beautiful evening. And it's been a hot day today, and we'll see if we can make it an even hotter evening tonight.
Excellent. Do you have some activities going on tonight?
No, not tonight. We might get a little bonfire going a little later on. I've got about a 15-foot bonfire pit in front of the camp, and we might have a few beverages around the bonfire later tonight.
Sorry, we're just getting an alert here in Alberta. We have a storm coming. All right. So if my end drops, because I'm on Starlink, so if my end drops, you guys are amazing, and Randy can continue. But in Alberta, we get lots of warning messages here, especially during wildfire season. So, Randy, are you anywhere near the wildfires in Ontario?
We had a few fires. We had a good dry spell for a few weeks, but the fire bans just came off last week, and as we got a few days around. So it was much needed. But, it's we have fires every year. Surprise. Hot when it's dry. Mother Nature wants to put a little more CO2 into the atmosphere.
Much needed healthy. CO2, right?
Absolutely.
Much needed CO2. Let me kill this. There we go. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, for sure. Now, we could get into some of that stuff, but at first I want to kind of talk to you about before you became a member of parliament. I want to talk about the Randy who kind of grew up and getting into politics. So can I take you back to before you got into politics and ask you what got you into it? Was there a moment that made you say, hey, I want to have a say about that? Or was it something else that brought you into politics at the beginning?
Well, I grew up in a small family with a small family business, so politics had an impact on our business. So we were always taught that we should be engaged and be aware of what politicians are doing and how that's going to affect our family and our family business.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just a whole thing for the family of 9 kids in a family business. You had to keep an eye and be attentive to what government was proposing to do and how it would impact you. So I largely just was a observer politics until around the year 2000. Shortly after 2000, I started a group with a number of other rural landowners. It was called the Lanark Landowners Association. That grew substantially over the years. I was the president of it. Our slogan was, "This land is our land, back off government." And recognized back then that government was growing too fast and too large and interfering into our lives and our livelihoods in our properties in rural Ontario. One of our slogans was the rural revolution, and we hosted hundreds of protests. We closed many government buildings. We had tractor convoys. We closed up, shut down Toronto, Ottawa, many border crossings here in defense of private property rights and fighting back against government intrusion in our lives. And so that was really when I began to become very political. But after 6 years of full-time protesting and advocacy, and I needed to take a wee bit of a break. Protesting is, but it's also has its own level of difficulties and challenges, and of course, pay very well either. So after 6 years, I decided to take a break. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I had to take a change. And a couple months after I resigned as president of the Ontario Landowners Association, the nomination for the Conservative Party in my area in politics became available, and I sought that nomination. The party certainly didn't want me to. They offered bribes for me not to run.
What kind of bribe?
Hey?
What kind of bribes would you be offered to not run?
In nice inside where I didn't have to work too much, and they would pay me well not to be a politician.
So a comfortable chair somewhere.
But you know, I wasn't doing it as a job. But you know, I was an electrician. Go and get a job most anywhere, and I thought naively at the time that it was easier. It would be easier to drain the swamp while you're inside the swamp.
Right.
And there was a big lesson to be learned over 15 years that you drain the swamp from the outside, not.
Yeah, I was going to ask, which swamp are you trying to drain, the government or the party?
Well, they're all intermixed. And the swamp extends beyond the government and beyond the party. It's in our institutions, it's in our courts, it's in our law enforcement, in our education. There's also a swamp in our culture, where many, I would say the majority of Canadians don't even understand what their role and what their responsibility and how governance and role in it actually requires of them. So there's The swamp is many things. It is the parasites of political parties. It is the pathogens in our institutions, but it's also the ignorance within our society as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've been seeing that ignorance a lot over the last 3 years. It's been amplified quite a bit. Would you agree?
Oh, well, it's been, this is purposeful in its design. As somebody who's been around for 65 years, we've seen a very relentless degradation of education in the public education system, degrading of responsibility, personal responsibility, degrading and conflating and distorting what freedom actually means and what it is. Most people think that freedom is something as minor and unimportant as to, choosing which pub I go to or choosing which vacation spot I may go to. But freedom is far, far more profound than that. This is, absolute freedom not to do wrong, the freedom to do right, the freedom to have a moral compass. These are the freedom to raise your family with and instill the values and principles that that have longevity and that are important. There's so much more to freedom than choosing what which restaurant you may go to for the evening.
Yeah, no, some people think that freedom is what's left over after the government has stopped you. Sorry, your connection's a little bit choppy.
Well, it's the freedom to also hold your government accountable for their actions.
Yeah.
Right? And never to fear your government, and never to fear having an opinion. Now, that also comes, we all understand this. Free has that flip side to the coin is responsibility. You must have the freedom to dissent and oppose, but you also have the responsibility to do so from a mission of knowledge and with fact. Those.
And in the systems as well. So the institutions themselves, you're mentioning that there's swamp there as well. So that's procedure. That's really what we kind of created. And you believe that there's lots of room there to improve as well.
Oh, our institutions have become as self-serving and as reprehensible as our political parties. We have libraries and legions seeing sexually explicit and exploitive drag queen story times and exposés and inviting young children to witness this. These libraries are supposed to be an institution of learning, of gaining knowledge, not sexual exploits. Our legions are supposed to be there to assist and help our veterans, not host these tranny drag bullshit.
That's the right term, by the way.
And say with our courts are there to retrain government to ensure that they conduct themselves in accordance with the Constitution, and we've seen that they have become self-serving as well. And there's no better indication of that than with Justice Rollo.
Rollo, yeah. Can we maybe get you turning your video off to try and get your audio clearer? I'm sorry, Randy, to interrupt you there. If you just hit the camera icon, we may have better audio.
Is that working?
Oh, wow. Yes. So let's just do it this way. I think the chat will be a lot happier. We saw you. You have a great blue shirt on. I apologize, but I think we can hear you a lot better.
Okay. I'm not sure.
Okay, so we were saying you used the proper term. The tranny storytime hours is bullshit, I believe is where we left off.
Yeah, but also the court, the political seats in our courts, our law enforcement. Look at how our police behaved in the last 3 years of actually arresting people for carrying a Canada flag.
Hmm.
You know, this is arresting kids for playing hockey on a pond. Uh,
Going to
this
a
is
park.
they have forgotten that they're there to serve as well as protect. Um, and so our courts, our laws, our libraries, our schools, um, you can look through any of our institutions that were created to safeguard our liberties, um, have become nothing but self-serving entities, the same as our political parties have become.
And these ones are a lot more difficult because these are not elected positions. These are appointed or hired. And we don't really have access to recall or anything like that, correct?
Well, in some of them we do. Like most legions have an annual general meeting and an election. Uh, most library boards, most hospitals have. In Ontario, all our hospitals have an annual general meeting with elections. But people have forgotten that it is a duty to be engaged and to be involved, and they have said, "Well, let's let somebody else take care of all this," in
Hmm.
that we don't ourselves. Well, this is the mess that we get when we just allow others to take care of our responsibilities, and we would rather spend our time playing a video game than understanding what's going on in our communities and our hospitals or our police service boards. So this is it will take a great sea change of in attitude for us to get back to something that resembles what we thought Canada was a few years ago.
We were having some good discussions yesterday about this, and one thing that kept coming up was we need to have some pain. We need Canada kind of needs to fail a little bit to feel a little bit of pain. Do you think we need that, or is there a way to do this without having a complete collapse?
Well, people generally, this is not to be overly critical or cynical, but when people are comfortable, they don't do much. When everything
Exactly.
is going so, and this is what we saw during COVID. About 60% of the population actually benefited from COVID. White collar workers, government workers, um, we're making oodles of money, not having to commute to go into work, being able to stay home in their pajamas and still collecting their paychecks, still having their pensions billed. There was a lot of people who, and it afforded them a lot of time to go out and maybe buy a pontoon boat or put in a pool and enjoy life without having to go to work. So people, when they're comfortable, aren't going to make any change. It's only when people find discomfort
Hmm.
that they waited enough to get off the couch, put the smartphone down, put the video game down, and actually learn what's happening and take action. That's it has shown us that in spades throughout the entirety of human history.
Right, and that discomfort doesn't have to necessarily be like physical pain, but it could be you're encroaching on my family, you're encroaching on my rights, you're encroaching on my property. Like there could be a whole bunch of different ways for this uncomfortable period to be.
Yeah. So this latest one, where we're encroaching significantly and destroying the lives of our children, that's causing a lot of discomfort,
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
getting people rallied and it's getting them to be aware of what's going on, and getting them to understand that it's not just a one-off situation. Uh,
Hmm.
this is widespread throughout our entire education system. So, in the same with, as obviously as the standards of living continue to drop and inflation goes up and interest rates are rising, that's going to cause more discomfort. Obviously, people at the lower end of the income level are going to experience that discomfort faster and to a greater degree than.
Yeah, very disproportionately they'll get it.
Yeah. Justin Trudeau's not going to be too worried about the mortgage rate, the inflation rates rate at the moment. He's got not only a handsome income, he's also got a foundation that's flush with dough. Like that's. But as this progresses, and we can see as all these societal ills, the destruction that's happening in our inner cities, in Vancouver, in Toronto, all those people who are homeless and who are addicted and who are devastated with, various addictions and drugs, they all have family members as well.
Yes.
That discomfort, when are people going to be motivated to actually do something? Well, we don't know what the time frame is, but we know that when they feel that discomfort themselves, that's when they'll be motivated.
Yeah, so I think you agree with me that discomfort can come from a whole bunch of different ways. It doesn't have to be hungry bellies, but it could also be you're touching my children, you're doing things I don't agree with, you're keeping secrets with my children that I don't know. So these are other types of way to be very, very uncomfortable, even if you're middle class, right?
And different people have different values that are going to cause, the new expansion of MAID, medical assistance in dying.
Yes.
The continued abortion problem. Like we really have embraced the death cult through public policy. Where we're diminishing the fertility rates, we're with this trans agenda and other things, and we're destroying many children before they're born while they're in the womb, and expanding the opportunity for the state to conduct social murder for those who are living in poverty and homelessness with MAID.
Yes. Yeah, there's an attack on reproduction and there's an attack on lifespans if you're not valuable, it appears. So once you're no longer valuable, you're on that list. And there's an attack on reproduction in general, whether or not we're doing it or whether or not we're stopping it. There's a lot of different angles on stopping reproduction. I think I agree with you on that one. And that could also explain why the indoctrination is happening, because a particular side is not reproducing, so they need to recruit. You see that as well?
Yeah, we have embraced this idea that children are a thing to do. Of course, anybody like a father, and I think there's nothing more blessed and more divine in one's life than to have, but I saw, there's a billboard campaign going on in the UK right now that children are bad for the environment. And of course, if you buy into the falsehood, the doom and gloom, apocalyptic climate change, that CO2 is bad for us, I breathe, we're destroying the environment. And if you take that to a logical conclusion, the only way you can save the environment is by extinguishing human life.
And I don't think we need to be doing that. And by the way, happy End of the World Eve. Tomorrow is the 5-year anniversary of Greta Thunberg's destruction of the Earth prediction. So if you're still here tomorrow night, I guess she was wrong.
She's never right. So,
well, maybe she'll update that prediction and then we can just fix our calendars. But yeah, so I'm going to actually kind of rewind a little bit because now we jumped into a lot of the topics that I definitely want to get into with you. But right now I got you at, we are entering the Conservative Party. So at that time it was the Conservative Party of Ontario, and you ran. They didn't want you, but you ended up winning. So how did that campaign go when you didn't have as much party support, or did you have any party support when you did that campaign?
Zero party support. The party, like I said, they had offered me jobs. I did a story on this in Scuttlebutt Lodge. One of my episodes was how the political party attempted to bribe me to prevent me from running. And that I did that story the same week that Carrie Lake announced that the Republican
Arizona.
Party,
Yeah,
her money not to seek elected office any further. This is commonplace. Political parties rigged the nomination process. They rigged leadership campaigns, and nobody really understands. Nobody in the general public really understands how it works. And it took me a few years to understand just how to dots and see which dots that I was permitted to see. Because much is kept hidden from the caucus members. But I soon found out that a couple of things that, well, I've said this to people. I thought when I was first elected that I would be one of those very few people who would stand and debate with the greatest speakers and thinkers in Ontario, in the Ontario legislature, and debate the great topics and subjects of the day. I soon realized that if I wanted to have an intelligent conversation, I should stay at home or go to the Tim Hortons, because there was no intelligent conversation. Everyone was quite satisfied to be to never read any legislation, never to have any knowledge of the subject matter, and to be provided the messages that the party wanted you to deliver. So it was clear that it was all theatrical. And, it also was reinforced when, many people think when we have a caucus meeting and you're discussing a piece of legislation or a public policy, you're debating the benefits, the advantages and negatives of how this will impact your constituents. But that's falsehood. That's a total fabricated myth. The only lens the caucus looks at a legislation is how will it benefit the political party? Will it result in more donors providing us more money, or will it encourage more people to vote for us or not vote for us? It is only how will the political party benefit. That's how legislation is evaluated.
So there's no there's no debate on policy, but there's a debate on the party purse, and they want to make sure the party purse is okay. Am I hearing you right?
The party purse and the party electoral force.
Right. So they can hold their power. So party purse and power are take priority over policy and debate.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Like nobody measures a policy to say that. Well, how does that complement or contradict our stated principles and our values? Well, there are no values. Like there's not in party politics. There's the only value is are we going to win? Are we going to get are people going to continue to contribute money to us? So that was and I guess the final thing I would say on that is that it took a while to learn. It was just who actually runs the show there and that it's not elected people, not even the prime minister or the premier.
Correct.
They don't run the show. And the level of corporate interest that often channeled through lobbyists and PR and GR, but not exclusively, and I've said this oftentimes, I don't believe in my 15 years in elected office that I would say about 99% of all legislation that is ever advanced and enacted there's an unseen corporate interest behind it,
right,
that has funneled large dollars into the party through the lobbyists, make that happen. And that's and they're very skillful at wordsmithing and disguising the motivation for that legislation. It often comes under consumer safety or consumer protection,
right,
safety, but it's always for the corporate interests that and how will it improve share in the market, will it enhance their profits, and that's where the chiefs of staff, the campaign team, all people that aren't elected, and most people don't know who their names are,
right,
who we steer the premier or the prime minister into policy position.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that there's no money as a protester, but there's certainly money as a lobbyist. So if you want to become a professional protester, that's an avenue for you there. And Ottawa, well, for you, it would have been Toronto, right? Because you're provincial. So on the provincial level, is there a uniparty there as well? Or is it just two really strong parties and then a third option?
Well, they're all uniparties in that they all understand the theater of the legislature or the parliament. They all understand that none of them are there for the public's interest. Institutionally, the administrative state is more important than the public interest. So I don't think that's different in any province, any provincial legislature, or the parliament, the federal parliament. It is there may be some, let's say, on very real matters of public policy, there may be, a 1 or 2 or 3% difference between all of the parties, but it's negligible, and it really, at the end of the day, you're gonna get what the lobbyists want, and they are very effective in all parties.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you entered, so now we know that they didn't want you there. They were trying to get you out, but you still ran anyways, and you were able to get the nomination, and then you ended up winning the election. How'd you go about doing that without support from the party?
Well, because of my lengthy activism, I was a very well-known person throughout in Canada, and that was one of the reasons why if I had just been a normal Joe Blow without that background, the party wouldn't have let me. They would have disqualified me. But
Right.
because I had such a throughout rural Ontario, the party, the Conservative Party, was worried that if they rejected my nomination, that it would have significant cascading impact on many other rural ridings that they held.
Got you.
It was sort of double jeopardy for them, a double-edged knife. Do they let me in, or do they take the run the risk of losing many seats because they unfairly disqualified me? So
right.
But
no.
A lot of the mainstream conservative establishment here stayed at home, and I won my election by about 900 votes. Subsequently, I was always placed well over 50%.
Mhm.
That first one, a close race.
Okay, so now you win. You're in. Sorry, you're saying?
Yep. So that's I got in by 900 votes and kept winning with much bigger plurality. But I continued to always be running afoul and offside of the party throughout my and was often bounced from the front bench to the back bench, farthest corner of the back benches. I was often put in the penalty box by the party for being outspoken and voting against the party.
Okay, so you were voting against them. You weren't being whipped, and you didn't follow them. And what does being in the penalty box mean when it comes to being in a party? Do they just not give you stuff to do, or what does that mean?
Yeah, they try to prevent you from asking questions. They try to prevent you, and they can be very effective at this as well, preventing you from doing member statements, removing you from committees, um, avenues that you have to project your voice for your. They seek to eliminate, and they also use, like any other group dynamic, they use the other party members as a means to attempt to marginalize and ostracize people who aren't playing by the rules and aren't being the trained SEAL that they want them to be.
So, how many terms did they put up with that, or how many terms did you put up with that for before you switched?
Well, it was in my fourth term where we finally came to blows, and I was initially suspended from the caucus by Doug Ford's chief of staff, who told me he suspended me in February of 2019.
Okay.
But he when I met him in August of 2018 after the election, that that he was going to have me at a caucus one way or the other. Like that was, he was going to get me out.
And what was the issue at that time that you guys butted heads on? If you can share that.
He didn't like me.
Just that. That's it. You didn't like your boisterous attitude and the ability to vote against the party. You didn't like that.
Yeah, that was like that is the ultimate. There is no worse offense in party politics than to be not obedient. Like that is a capital. So they removed me in February, or suspended me, and then they sent their emissaries to me over the next couple months to try to goal me to come back into the caucus, because the party was getting a lot of heat from my constituents and from other people in Ontario.
Yeah.
And finally, the last me was that they would take me back as long as I would vow never to speak with anyone what went on with either the party or with the lobbyists who were involved with the party. But it was both.
So they're protecting the lobbyists.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
Okay.
these guys who are the emissaries are actually lobbyists as well. They own these firms, and they were working on Doug Ford. This fellow was Chris Froggatt. He owned loyalist strategies, and then another one was Corey Tonight. He owned Rubicon. They were both campaign managers, both the transition team managers, and I remember saying to these guys, I said, what if I see continued criminal wrongdoing going on by people associated with the party and with the party? And they said, under no condition will I speak to anything about anyone. I'd have to bring concerns of criminal wrongdoing to the lobbyists
First.
And that's when we say, hey, it's time to part ways.
Wow. So they get right of first refusal on any criminal activity being reported to the proper channels. That's democracy right there for you. That's incredible. Okay, so you parted ways. Was that you said, okay, I'm done, or they said we're not happy, and then you both said we're done, or how did that conversation go down?
It was after that conversation where I told these guys that I would not abide by those terms that Doug Ford said, I'm gone.
So you got kicked out. So they took away the party membership?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's that process look like? You lose your badge, they change your nameplate, and what else happens? What other things do you lose because of that?
Well, you gain your freedom.
Okay, so you don't look at it as losing a thing. You gain freedom. But what powers, like you have no power from the party anymore, so you're a vote at this point.
We asked questions of the government that I was prohibited from doing as being a member of. Like the party allots who gets to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
Ask the party any question I wanted to, and I did. And I could make any statement in the House without their approval.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, there is a consequence of that, and we know this to be actually in Canadian politics. The independents, most Canadian people vote along party brand loyalty, not who the individual is.
Correct.
It runs, and most of the people who are in elected office are there because they have run on the coattails of a party banner, not because of they themselves having merit or competence. So for all those people, to be an independent is a scary, scary situation. Mm-hmm. For me, it was, in 2019, before the great counterfeit pandemic hit, I was quite confident that I would be viable as a contestant in the next election. But then the great pandemic and the great lie took hold. Political.
Yeah, we're going to get to those years in a second here. So when you were kicked out of the party, what did your constituents say? Were they happy with you? Were they upset with it? What were your voters saying?
Oh, there was an outpouring of opposition and condemnation to Doug Ford, and that's what they had engaged for in trying to find a way back into caucus because the donors to the party in this area and throughout rural Ontario turned off taps and were quite outspoken in condemning Doug Ford for doing what he did.
All right, so they didn't have Doug Ford's support at all, but they made it clear to you that you had their support. And now I think you're taking us now into the COVID time, because this was 2019 that you got kicked out of the party?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so late 2019, December, January, we're rolling around and we're starting to get into COVID now. Now, you were being outspoken about other issues before COVID hit, correct?
Oh, yes. Yeah. About the lobbyists, about the corporate influence within, about the generally the duplicity and the dishonesty within government. So that's been a long running theme in my political career.
And how about your relationship with the media before and after leaving the party? Did you have a problem with the media before while you were in the party and it got bad after, or was it always kind of bad?
No, it was always good. There was always those who thought that I was a as one media personality described it, a gun-toting redneck hillbilly with a mob mentality. There were some downtown urban journalists who just didn't like my style or my politics. But generally speaking, the media and I got along quite well until COVID.
Right. So let me get this right. A gun-toting redneck with mob mentality. So you have your right to have a gun. You're outside working a lot, so you're in the sun, and you have supported your community. So what's wrong with that?
Everything.
Because I'm doing the math here. I'm like, well, that sounds pretty good. So what's wrong with that?
If you're a downtown Marxist,
right, you're the most dangerous thing there can be.
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And many people in journalism are downtown urban socialists. So there were those who despised me, reprehensible, found that how could we allow such an individual even to run in the august Ontario legislature?
That makes the hair on my neck stand up. That somebody saying the words like, how can we allow? It's the people's choice. Like, the people are the ones who decide who's up there. But I guess there's some puppet masters is what you're talking about here.
It's all, it all is. As I said, the nominations are rigged.
Mm-hmm. So
the lead campaigns are rigged. Nothing, and I've used this analogy. I'll say it once again. Our representative democracy, as much as what we believe it to be, in fact, the best way to describe it is watching a good theatrical performance. You see who the starring actors are, the lead actors, the prime minister. You can see who the supporting cast are. You can, and they're the cabinet ministers, etc. And then the extras who are the backbench. But what you don't see are the producers and the directors and the people who are writing the screenplays.
The profiteers.
You don't. Those are the ones who make this story appear real. And there's a reason. Justin Trudeau's a drama teacher. That's a good experience to get into politics. Is theater.
You're right. Yeah.
Pierre Poilievre could probably give Justin Trudeau theatrical lessons. He is that good. He has spent over 20 years honing his theatrical skills. He's vacuum empty, but he puts on a good show. Again, most people are not going to know who is running Pierre Poilievre.
Right.
We some of us know who are running Justin Trudeau. People like Jerry Butts, people at SNC, people at the Canada-China Business Council. We know who some of those people are, and your audience will remember Jody Wilson-Raybould. Was somebody who went against the party line in a very similar frame as I did, and paid the price as well. This is not unique to any political or single political party. This is how our system works. So
now that you're an independent and you're coming up to the COVID time and you're speaking out, did the media pick up any of the stuff you were speaking out? Did you get any traction on any of your issues that you were talking about before COVID?
Before COVID, all the time.
Okay.
I had a couple bills passed at second reading. I had a motion passed to create an standing committee on Indigenous affairs in Ontario. It was passed by the party, enacted. I had a public accountability bill passed at second reading that would have strongly limited lobbyists and would have also permitted elected members to make complaints to the integrity about members of the public service, which were not permitted to do. And that passed. The media covered all these things. But as soon as I started speaking out against the state of emergency first, on March 20th, and my continued outspokenness against the bizarre approach and reprehensible, harmful approach that we had taken to COVID, the media turned their taps off on me pretty quickly.
So the state of the emergency for Ontario, so the first one there that came down, that's the one you're talking about? And this is before the convoy, right? This is for COVID?
This is 2020.
Right.
This is the first of COVID.
Right.
COVID emergency was declared in Ontario on March 17th. The legislature was vacated and emptied. At our first opportunity, we had 1 day to come back to the legislature. We were permitted back in the legislature on March 26th. And I stood in the House and questioned the government on the harm that the state of causing the people in my riding, the anguish, the inability to get medical treatment, the despair of having their businesses closed, and I said the government in a time of crisis, because at that time we still didn't really know what we were dealing with fully.
Yeah.
The evidence is far more abundant since. But in a time of crisis, a political leader ought to instill confidence and lead by example, and not encourage fear in our society, but encourage strength and fortitude. And I gave the analogy of Winston Churchill when the UK was facing a crisis in the Second World War. He didn't get up in the House of Commons and say, well, we have to close up the House of Commons and everybody run for their basement and hide from the Nazis. He said, let's fight them on the beaches. Let's stand and be Englishmen. And he led the nation through his actions and words to face the crisis, not to cower from it.
Correct. And in order to take a popularity poll and ask the people what they wanted, he knew what they needed. And then that's what a leader will do, is bring to you what you need, not necessarily what you want. But you're not seeing that in Ontario at this time. So the leader's kind of just doing whatever others want and shutting down the legislator. So you were there on the 26th. You got a box or something, packed up some stuff, and then went home. Is that how that day went?
I left my offices open because the legislature was in a state of state of emergency, and we did have a couple of days to speak in April. I think in April that's when I first also spoke out against the that the evidence in April now, to me, after the Diamond Princess cruise ship disembarked, all the evidence for Diamond Princess, it was clear to me that what we were dealing with was a seasonal flu. And I stated that. And of course, it happened a few times through that period of time where the speaker of the House would just cut off my microphone and and the government would not respond.
Well, what's the procedure for cutting off your mic? They can just do it, or do you have to reach some sort of threshold, or is just their opinion to do it?
No. The speaker is an independent, and he is there to protect the rights and privileges of the members, and he is the final arbiter of his decisions.
So it's a misspelling of dictator almost, because that doesn't sound independent. But so he kept cutting your mic off. You weren't able to speak anymore, and this was in April, you're saying?
Well, I still, he could not. He had to recognize when I stood. He had to recognize me, but he felt very uncomfortable with my questions, and often would turn my microphone. You have the rules in the Ontario legislature are you have a 1 minute to deliver a question. The government has 1 minute to respond. And then you have a supplemental question of 45 seconds. And the government has supplemental response of 45 seconds. And, but, the speaker's watch was very different than mine.
Yeah, he's in a different time zone, or is moving quick when you're up and slow when they're talking.
Yeah. So, this is like he was very uncomfortable. He was a very fearful individual. He's the one who brought all the mandates that prevented people such as myself from even. He tried very often to prevent me from voting because I would not wear something that I'm not allowed to talk about in the House. But I refused to wear it time. And then he brought in another mandate that said that you had to have injected into your body something in order to be in the legislature. And I refused to do those things. So eventually it came to the point in September of 2021 where I was no longer to be in the legislature.
So that was an official decision? Like you got something in writing that said, until these other items are addressed, you can't come in? Is that kind of how that went down?
No, they said this is the rule in the House. You cannot enter any of the buildings, even my office, unless you have
the following conditions met.
Unless you've been fully vaccinated and you're wearing a face covering, that the guards will prevent you from going into the legislative buildings. So that was now when I actually closed up my office in June of 2022. They did allow me to go into the legislative building and close out my office without being injected and without wearing any face coverings.
But you were alone and everybody had to stay away from you, or it was just a normal day?
Yeah. No, that's like most places, Jason. We had instilled a level of fear into a great many, and there was also the not just fear of the virus. The bigger fear that we had instilled into people was the fear of being ostracized, the fear of called names, the fear of peer pressure. These were far, far more significant for most people than the fear of the cold virus.
Absolutely. And on whose authority did they have that order? Was it something that got passed? Was it a motion that got passed? Or what authority gave them that ability to keep you out of the legislature?
Yeah, the three parties, the Liberals, the Conservatives, and the NDP had all agreed to delegate.
Like on party consent or something?
Well, all those parties had agreed and adopted a motion that the speaker could make any ruling he wanted in the name of
health,
public.
Okay, so the parties got together, but they didn't pass. That was a way of passing the order to give it to the speaker.
Yeah.
Cool. What's that mechanism called?
It's just a motion of the House.
Just a motion, straight up motion. Okay, it was basically on consent. Nobody really challenged it other than maybe you.
Yeah, there was a few of us. By that time, I was the first elected member in that I'm aware of that spoke publicly against COVID, even though I knew that there were a great many other elected members who thought like myself. They were hesitant, too fearful to speak out. Eventually, some of my other former colleagues would come around. A year later, Roman Baber came out to speak out against the vaccines for the mandate and the lockdowns. A year and a half later, Rick Nichols would come out. These were people that, from the get-go, knew that it was wrong, but were too hesitant to speak out. And I know a great many more, both federal and provincial politicians, are still in office today, but never spoke out, and continued not to speak out, but thought that, like me, that the pandemic was more counterfeit.
So was there concern more public backlash, or just you're not following the party requirements or the party reasons, like an agenda type of thing or a narrative type of thing? Like, were they concerned that the public would be upset, or was it just because they wanted you to do it?
Who do you mean by they?
Well, in order to pass this rule and kick you out and really take the fear and put it in everybody, do you think they were trying to do that because of public pressure, or it was internal pressure, this fear that was being generated? Were they fearful that the public would say, hey, we want you guys to do all this stuff? Or was it coming from inside?
Oh, both. Like
Okay.
these, public policy, like that's the other element of this. Let's not be, this people might not like what I'm going to say, but most of the policies that were enacted by our governments to take away our freedoms and shut down our business, close our healthcare, were fully supported by the public. They did extend bullying. Now I could also add that once you instill a great deal of fear into a population and then what they think, let's not be surprised that a great many of them want every conceivable safety precaution after you've instilled that level of fear.
Correct.
It's sort of like a positive feedback loop that we were engaged in, where the government would indicate the fear. The population instead would respond to that fear by wanting more precautions, which then was the motivation for the government to instill even more lockdowns and greater restrictions, which then caused more fear in people. So, as I started off, politicians aren't elected because and aren't nominated because of their intelligence and their competencies. Any individual could have saw that we were creating this positive feedback loop, and we were amplifying the fear unnecessarily throughout the 3 years.
Now, internally, were they sharing information like death rates and death counts and infection rates? Were they sharing that internally with you guys to kind of scare you as well?
Yeah, well, they were sharing the same stuff that they did public, which was a highly distorted and disguised and set of stats. We saw this.
Okay, so you're getting the same numbers as us then, is what I'm asking.
Oh, absolutely. Like, they were causing anybody who had been tested by a faulty, which we knew was faulty, the PCR test. Our Minister of Health stated quite clearly that we get 50% false positives with the PCR test in 2020. But still, we mandated it. And we still use that to then inflate the death numbers. And if you, regardless of how many more illnesses that one may have, if you had a PCR test that indicated that you had a cold virus, that was more likely to be false than true, you were listed as a COVID death.
Yep. No matter what, it was, even if it was an accident or whatnot, if that test came back, you were a COVID. Now, is there a motivator for that? Was there a reason for that you understood? Was there a reason for them to change those numbers or inflate those numbers?
Well, yeah, I spoke with a number of Doug Ford's and party staffers late April. We were outside the legislature having a smoke one day, and they had come to realize that it was a hoax, that they had made an error. And I will say this, on the record, most people in politics did not understand what was happening. And they responded, they listened to the wrong people, and and some people were providing them false information that that to their own profits. But I remember speaking with these staffers, and they said, "Randy, how do we get out of this mess?" And I said, "Well, we have to be truthful to the population that we made an error. It was an honor, but we overreacted. An abundance of precaution. We know that it is we went too far, and we're going to start reeling things back." And obviously, no government, no institution ever wants to make or admit that they made a mistake. That's not good for political theater to say, I was wrong. And that's what these staffers said to me. They said, "Well, we can't admit wrong." And I said, "Well, the longer you keep the lie going, the harder this is going to be to end, and the harder it will be for people to ever have any trust in it."
Absolutely. Like, I'm shocked that adults are having this conversation, but I guess I'm a little naive. Thank you for telling us about this. So yeah, go on. So they're telling you not to talk about it. They knew the numbers were wrong. We really should correct them, but too much egg on our face. We don't like egg on our face, so we're just going to keep it. So how long did that last, or did that still, as far as you know, it's still in place?
Like events in Ottawa really triggered the break of that fortress of COVID. Okay. Oh, there was a public display, an overwhelming public display that people had reached the end, that they weren't buying into the program. And although I'm not allowed to talk about those things,
No.
That had a profound impact. And shortly thereafter, the mask mandates came off. Shortly afterwards, the rules on the curfew in Quebec came off. The school closures came off. There was a great many things started happening as a result of the public protests throughout the country in February. And so, I'll say to everybody in the audience, nobody should ever think that what their presence and their public display have an impact. It had a huge impact. And by that summer, all these things were gone. And of course, now we can look at the evidence, how the Twitter files have revealed how much the U.S. military, the Five Eyes, the CIA, the FBI were engaged in a significant, concerted effort to suppress and censor any dissenting views on social media and regular media, and that our own Canadian military was also involved in those actions. Our own intelligence was involved in censorship and suppression. And it was throughout the Western world that our own government were engaged in a cover-up of what actually went on to help deflect the blame of COVID.
So you recognize that our narrative and the narrative south of the border and other places were very similar. Are you aware of the Trusted News Initiative?
I'm not sure if I am.
Okay, well, that's it's an organization from the UK that got spun up pretty quickly with the BBS, CBC, CNN, all of them. If you can name it, they're on there. And that was an initiative that was meant for ensuring that the narrative was consistent so that it wouldn't spread any misinformation, is the way they, like you said earlier, they'll roll it up with something else, but it means something else. So they're saying we're combating misinformation, but what they're really doing is controlling the narrative. So Safe and Effective came out. Everybody heard that mantra many, many times. We can't go into that. There's a certain details that we can't get into with you. So let's be careful with that. So there was a party in Ottawa. Party ended. Some changes happened. Now we're past that particular event. What are you doing now? So I understand you're not running for another term, and what's the decision behind that? Why did you choose not to run for another term? Is it because you're independent or because other things are going on?
Well, it really was those events opened my eyes substantially. Guess what? That we're in a much bigger battle. This
Right.
is not a political battle, and it also opened up my eyes, to what is happening to our country. When I grew up, men and women were supposed to be independent. They were supposed to be self-reliant. They were supposed to have an opinion. They were supposed to protect their families, put food on their tables. They were, we were supposed to have a moral compass. We, and this is the first time in Canadian history since 1919 that we saw law enforcement be engaged in violent, abusive, physical violence, peaceful protesters. And we also saw unfortunately, the majority of Canadians applauded our police physically abusing peaceful citizens.
And not just applauding. There was a group of it that were not satisfied that it didn't go far enough. There was a group that wanted more.
And I had always, I had viewed COVID because everything that was going on through COVID was irrational. To say that it was dangerous to go outside and get fresh air and sunshine, it was dangerous to go out and to go to a store, but you could go to Walmart or the beer store.
Right. Big box, no problem, but small, no way.
It was dangerous to go out and play road hockey or basketball or go camping. None of this was rational to any, normal thinking individual.
But it was not dangerous to BLM protest and some other particular issues.
Yeah. And, and because of the obscured nature of its origin, and then we find out that how the Canadian institutions and our military and our law enforcement was also involved in censoring and suppressing, as well as our academic institutions that effort in the US and the one that you mentioned in the UK. It's fairly evident to me that the best way to look at COVID is that this was a cultural war, a world war.
Right. Between compliant and non-compliant.
Well, between, a culture holds a moral compass firmly in their compass, a culture that understands responsibility and freedom, and, a culture that knows that my child is my child, it's not your child, it's not the state's child, that, and we're seeing this, there's a continuation of this cultural war going on, in my view, in Ukraine right at the moment. Because underlying every war, whether it be cultural or otherwise, is also an economic component. And it's very difficult for most people to be able to connect the dots together and see what's actually going on. So, I'm doing my own thing now. I'm for the first 2 years of COVID, I said I'm going to devote my full efforts 24/7 to wake people up to the falsehoods.
Great.
Of what is, and I thought that I could accomplish that within a couple of years. that we, my speaking out would motivate others to come out, would encourage others to have this be public, and then it did have an impact and effect, but it wasn't enough.
No.
And then I said, okay, now it's time for me to take care of my family.
And did you see a big drop off of support after the February events?
I think
a lot of Canadians got scared after they saw what the government could do or would do or did do. Do you think a lot of people kind of packed up at that point?
Well, I think people had to become far more cautious about what they were, but also, there was, to see people be financially destroyed because they have a different government, bank account seized. That's an extreme Soviet style response.
Right. I was going to say we would be very upset if we heard about that coming out of Russia.
Yeah. And of course, shortly afterwards, the war in the Ukraine did become earnest, and although it had been simmering for near 10 years prior, the war took off. Some people may say that's just coincidence to the timing or what. I know in politics, much is coincidence, but the state needed to change the channel. All the states, and when I say the state, the administrative state, the political state, and even though those events were happening in Ottawa, they had great impact throughout the American states as well. And we had seen a great sea change coming along, people like DeSantis and in Texas and what as well. So the channel had to be changed politically.
Right. So the channel used to be putting stuff into your body, and then the channel changed to taking things off your body and rearranging your body. Is that what you saw as well? We started cutting up the bodies after that?
Well, the biggest channel change was now we have a greater danger called Russia, and we fight them in Ukraine.
Right. Well, that's where all our money started to go and our attention started to go for sure. But a lot of the advocacy here started to become getting access to children and surgeries the last couple of years. Yeah.
So, we embraced this. We further continued our promoting the shame of our history and culture.
Right.
The ripping down Edgerton Ryerson or Queen Victoria. The statue of Sir John A. Macdonald is still boarded up the front lawn of the Ontario Legislature. We flew our half-mast for all of 2021. That we be ashamed of our history with our Native peoples, and the continued adoption and promotion of this confusing our children and this attack on our families and children. With the and as I demonstrated quite clearly, that's a uniparty initiative.
Right. C4 had 100% support, right? Bill C4.
And in 1995, I on one of my Scuttlebutt episodes called "How Governments Groom Our Children," I showed in 1995 where all three political parties here in Ontario had adopted an anti-heterosexual policy in 1995 under the guise of preventing bullying of trans or queer children.
Right. So it was a bill. Go ahead.
At its root was an anti-heterosexual agenda that viewed a heterosexual monogamous relationship ended up with children as being bad.
Correct. And that's what they copied into the C4 as well. So they brought that under an anti-bullying act, and classifying a certain group, a specific group, as protected against presumably the other group. And that's how they went ahead and worded that one, which turned it into an anti-heterosexual straight bill. It actually made it legal to bully those people, but not the other people, right?
Yeah. It wasn't. This was done through a policy. It wasn't done through a bill.
Okay, it was a policy.
It was. Yeah. This is where, again, what happens in politics, sometimes it's done through a bill, sometimes it's through regulations, through policies from our subordinate institutions.
And sometimes more shows.
Yeah. But that was carefully disguised by all parties. This family as anti-bullying initiative, and most Canadians were uninterested, uncaring, bother, and along it came, and that's when we got our first exclusive high school in Toronto, exclusive for gay, lesbians, and trans. Was back then.
So segregation started there.
Had the public been aware of it, had I been aware of it, had anybody been aware of it, there would have been a huge outcry back then.
Sure, but it would have been tough to come out and say, I am anti-bullying. That would have been a tough argument. You have to come out.
What was disguised was that there was an exclusive segregated high school in Toronto for gay kids. Like back in the 90s, we still believed that segregation was a bad thing, that we but that was part of the policy. These people are special. They need to be protected. They need to be segregated, and their oppression must be elevated to encourage more people to want to be oppressed, encourage more people to be a victim, so that they can have special attention.
So I moved to Ontario around that time, so I wasn't aware of that one. But was there an incident that happened, or was there a string of incidences that happened that kind of spurred that on, or did they just bring it forward as something to work on as a policy? Like, was somebody hurt? Did something cause this policy to be created?
No.
No, it was just everybody started implementing those province-wide, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay, so all the school boards started in Toronto and branch, and that's typically how our institutions work. One municipality has something, or one school board, and the next one says, "Oh, well, that's these guys over there did that, so we should do it as well."
Right, and it becomes a bunch of a Me Too thing after a while. I want to do it as well, and they don't even know why they're doing it. Sometimes they're just implementing it because everybody else did. So if everybody jumped off a bridge with policy, I guess they would as well.
That's what we did with COVID.
You're not wrong. Now, are you aware that maybe some of this is coming from outside of our borders? Are you attached to the understanding of the agenda in any way?
Well, so listen, I think we place far too much stock in that to our own. I'll just give you this one example. We started hearing the word China interference 2 months ago. Well, this is not interference. Interference is when someone who is unwelcome comes in to your environment and starts altering the environment. The Chinese have been welcomed here for many decades.
They've been guests. They've been offering people things that they want.
Yeah, this is collusion. Collusion between parties so that they can get money and enrich themselves. It's collusion between our corporate interests. Take a look at the Canada-China Business Council. You'll see all kinds of former liberal and conservative ministers are on the Canada-China Business Council. They are enriching themselves. There is no foreign interference. It's all welcomed. All. Right. Whether corporate interests, whether it's Chinese corporate interests, whether it's Israeli or Taiwan corporate interests, whichever. This is about money, and it doesn't matter what color of skin you are when it comes to money. It doesn't matter what religion when it comes to money in politics. Everybody kneels in politics at the altar of money.
Now, apologies for me, but you're still a member right now, or no?
No, I finished in June of 2022,
Okay.
and now I raise chickens, and I raise vegetables, and I raise a cane with Scuttlebutt Lodge episodes as I give people some recollections and observations of my time in political office.
Wonderful. So that's going to be part of the education that you believe we need to have. We need to hear these messages more and learn these more. So Scuttlebutt Lodge, your podcast, that's your attempt to do that. I do have a question in the chat asking, where did that name come from, Scuttlebutt Lodge?
Well, when I was a young child, there was a lovely on TV Saturday mornings.
Scuttlebugs?
A fellow named Red Fisher would host the greatest hockey, baseball, and football players in Canada, United States, to go on fishing trips in Canada, and then come back and chat porch of Scuttlebutt Lodge and tell the truthful tales of their fishing expedition.
So it's not the tall tales, it's the truthful tales. And that's what you wanted to have, a sanctuary of truth. So you borrowed that name for that one.
Yeah. So, I also just to know that there's a place where they can get away, where there's like-minded, freedom-minded individuals. Come up, get some farm fresh eggs, check out the baby meat birds that we're raising. Sit right there and have good conversation.
Yeah, I've seen a few of your videos now, and I just finished watching one. You used the term false witness, which made me incredibly happy because not a lot of people use that term. It's one of the 10 Commandments. It's something that you should be keeping in mind a lot. And you use that term. So do you have a faithful side? Do you have some faith in you?
Oh, absolutely. I strongly believe in Jesus Christ. People of faith, you can practice your faith in different fashions. But I believe there's a reason why there's something more divine, something more important. And I think to look out at this great, wonderful world, not recognize how divine it actually is.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's nice to see, for example, like under this attack on our families, where people of various faiths are coming together. They recognize the danger to their families and their children. Regardless of what denomination you are or what faith you practice, but they understand that there is something more divine than just you and I or government. And if there isn't anything more divine than people, then government is the authority.
Absolutely. And I was talking to somebody a little bit earlier who made the comment that he wants more gun rights. It was just a conversation on Twitter. And I had to remind him, I'm like, well, you were actually born, God gave you those rights. Those are God-given rights. You actually want them to stop being suppressed. You don't want your rights back. You want them to stop being suppressed because you always had them. Is that also your take on this? It's not that the government bestows them to us. They're taking them away from us. And that's our problem at this stage.
Well, I would even put a more finer nuance on it, Jason.
Okay.
Rights and freedoms it can never be taken away. They can only be surrendered. They can only be given up.
Ah, yes. You have to give them away. Consent is what you're saying.
Yeah. They're like, nobody will ever take away my freedom to speak. Nobody will ever take away my freedom to travel where I want, to see who I want. Unless they put me in jail, my freedom, and even then, I will be free to speak with whoever wants to listen to me.
Right.
They have, but no, there is a reason why we use that term. That Jefferson used it in the Declaration of Independence, that these rights are bestowed by our Creator.
Correct.
That something beyond government, something that is divine, that makes these rights unassailable and off limits to any government. But in Canada, as in most of the Western world, we have lost faith.
Yeah.
As a society.
Well, have we replaced faith with government for a lot of people? Have they replaced their faith of something into government?
Well, we've conflated obedience and conformity to government with as something akin or similar to faith in God, and transcendent. Like I've been there. Nobody should think of people in government as godlike.
They shouldn't. That'd be a big mistake. There should be no false idols, right?
Yeah. And that the false witness is a good thing as well, because it's not just lying. It's governments have been practicing false witness for decades.
Yeah.
The term spin
or propaganda,
right? Where they misrepresent the facts by omitting relevant facts and context. And we did that significantly during COVID. We did it significantly with all the mandates during COVID. Our governments were engaged in false witness to the population. There's no question about it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And they still are. And I think they're the masters of it. And that's a very good controlling technique. It's a good way to get people to follow you, isn't it?
Well, and it's an easy way if when people are not attentive and who have lost sight of their own responsibilities. I always understood it that it was my responsibility to ensure that my children grew up with knowledge, with a moral compass, with an understanding of the world, just as my parents gave that to me. That's not the state's responsibility. But we see, and just as so many people want the state to provide the daycare, they want the state education, they want the state to tell them what they must do and how they must do it. We can point the finger at government, but in 15 years in elected office, I can't begin to tell you how many times people came to me wanting me to take away their responsibility.
Yeah. And it's mostly citizens, so not businesses, right?
That's mostly citizens, yeah. And corporations will go along with anything as long as they make money on it.
Sure, as long as their lobbyists are happy with it, they'll do whatever you want.
So, but yeah, like it is, we've lost. Not only have we lost faith in the divine, we've lost confidence in one another.
Mm. Like we've all, not all, but there's a 60% or so who don't protect children anymore.
Yeah.
So what happened there? So you've been around for a while. You watch the education system. So you must have seen how they were taking religion out of the education system. You must have seen how they were encouraging children to report to their parents if they're being disciplined. And you must have seen how they were taking children away from parents who would perform discipline. Do you think that's where we started to really mess things up, by passing full control of the students to the school and they were pulling it out of the hands of the parents when I was growing up, because that's kind of what I remember at those times. Because we went through a lot of indoctrination around turn your parents in, they're not supposed to hit you. You know what child protective services are. They would educate us on that, to tell us how to do it. So were you recognizing stuff like that creeping into the system early? Yeah.
So maybe just to remind people, when I was a child, when I went through school, we said the Lord's Prayer in school every day.
That's right.
Okay, it reinforced our message that I shall fear no evil. I shall walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Like, that there, we had this understanding, and then every morning we would also sing "O Canada." That reinforced faith as well, and we would sing "God to the Queen." Like every morning, we started off the day by instilling. We didn't think of it at the time. I didn't think of it at the time, but instilling that responsibility and instilling that faith. And gradually, we took that away. But when my own children went to school, I started I was just aghast. When the school brought in a no-touch rule in the schoolyard, that kids were no longer allowed to touch each other. They weren't no longer allowed to play tackle football. They couldn't even play flag football. That playing hockey in school was now too dangerous. The schools took down the basketball nets because somebody may get hurt playing basketball. They stopped the ski program for a couple of years because it was too dangerous that maybe a snowboard or a pair of skis might hit somebody on the school bus. And we generated this idea that masculinity was toxic, and that men shouldn't protect others. Men shouldn't protect themselves. Raise their hand and be little pussies and pansies asking for assistance whenever there was a bump or a scar, and heaven forbid if somebody brought peanut butter to the school, or that there was a nut tree near the school, you'd have to cut it down. Like everything,
right? Peanuts and everything.
Like there's and all that was generated because some well, we have to put salt on that piece of ice because the kids are sliding on it and they may fall and hurt themselves. That there's a snowbank in the schoolyard and somebody could roll down it and hurt themselves. So we have to get the snow removed. But
if a child, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's just all bullshit. But it was all
that's a good word for it.
It was all generated by us, by parents, and I remember going and complaining and talking to the school, I'm an assertive fella, but I'm not a violent fella. I've never, but I went in and I was angry and I confronted the school on why they were doing this, why they were had put salt and sand down on the sliding ice strip. And the principal said, well, our insurance company has told us we have to. I said, I want to see the memo. I want to see that note. I don't believe you. Let me see it. And then she says, well, it's in the policy. I said, you bring me that policy. Show me this policy that says there's no ice allowed at school. And, and of course, she couldn't.
No.
Shortly after, there was 5 cop cars there at the school because I wanted to have her prove the evidence that she was suggesting. And it was easier to call the cops than to provide the evidence.
And that's kind of the culture now. It's easier to just call you a name or get you in trouble or get you canceled or get you fired. It's easier to do that instead of debate you and work on the issues.
And be truthful to bear false witness. She was lying to me. And she was lying to everybody in the school.
Mm-hmm. And she's getting away with it. So once challenged, she doesn't want that challenge because she's used to not being challenged. She says whatever. And that's why she can tell you it's in this document, but it's really not. Because not only did she not fully probably read that document, she's just used to saying things and then having people accept it. She must be a preacher or something.
Well, no, I think that's a hallmark of our Canadian education. We have inculcated a view that the value that one can attain is to be obedient, to be deferent, to be timid, and to be accepting of any wrongdoing.
You're not wrong. Now that you say that, I remember we had a portion of our grade based on, I think they called it participation, but it would have been how you acted in the class. It wouldn't have been the results of your test. It would have been how you were acting in class. So even back then, they were actually grading us on our compliance, and they called it participation marks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just realized that because I think it was like 20% or 10% of the yearly grade was our obedience, our behavior.
Yeah, this is a sea change. When I grew up, as you a young man or woman, or any age, you were expected to have an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You were expected to assert your opinion. You were also expected to, to have that decision based on knowledge and observation or experience, something. Now it's just, what was the latest, woke Twitter comment? Well, we'll just have to go along with that.
Yeah, it's amazing how dynamic and quickly they change that stuff, but other things, no, not so much at all. They don't change at all. I'm going to kind of start to wrap you up. Are you familiar with a trans male in Alberta by the name of Lois, who goes by the name of Sterile Indian? Have you heard that story yet?
I probably have, but there are so many of those stories right now, Jason. I don't like there's that wannabe teacher, and I say wannabe teacher with the costume boobs in Ontario. Like, do I know? I don't recall their names.
Sure. Well, let me.
And I don't recall their names.
Sure, but let me tell you the story. Yeah, I think you'll appreciate this. So he's an Indigenous man on the reserve. When he was a young boy, at the age of 14, he watched Oprah, who glorified transsexualism and transvestites. So she glorified that when he was 14. He was an effeminate male, so it was a little bit different. But he believed that was his calling. He believed Oprah had it right. So what he did was, for the next 4 years, he kept pushing to get the surgery, and when he turned 18, he was able to apply. The Canadian government, Alberta government, approved him, accelerated his application by 2 years, completed the surgery by 20. Immediately, he regretted it. At no point did anybody explain to him he would become sterile. At no point did anybody explain to him that he would have to have an object in his body in order to create an open wound. And nobody explained to him the mental anguish that he'd be going through. And as a response to all of that, he's now applied for MAIDs. So he's on his way, a second application now. They denied the first one, but they let him know what he needed to correct on the second one. So he's a little bit more optimistic. This is his words, optimistic that he's going to be able to end his suffering. That was the Alberta government, Canadian government, who paid for that, who pushed him through that. He didn't get any education on the negativities of it, and nobody was allowed to assist him because of C4. C4 makes it illegal to assist anybody who identifies to go back to anything other than their new identity. So because of C4, because of the Canadian government, he has no support, zero support. There's nobody there helping him, and there's no transition support. So he's not able to get any support to even try and fix the wound that they gave him. So now he's looking for maids. We're hearing stories like that, Randy, all over the place. They're sterilizing children. They're convincing them early that they need to go through stuff like this, whether it's chemical castration or physical removal of testicles and other things. So is this going to be a breaking point? We're hearing stories like this all the time, Randy, that I'm hearing from parents that they're scared that their kids are going to go through school, they're going to go through some sort of indoctrination, and they can't even assist them because it would be called conversion therapy. So do you see this might be a breaking point for a lot of people, that will be the uncomfortable thing that we were speaking about at the beginning, that might be the line in the sand for a lot of people? And if so, how do we get this, the encouragement out to a lot of people to kind of stand up to this one? Is it through podcasts, or is there other things we can do?
Well, you got a lot there.
Yeah, sorry.
First off, if this isn't the catalyst for change, then we're euchred. You know, if we're not at the point where we will sacrifice our children on the altar of correctness and wokeism, then we're toast. It is interesting that Russia has now banned any puberty blockers for anyone other than pedophiles who have been convicted.
Right, to use it to stop those urges. Yeah, that makes sense.
They have made it unlawful now to castrate our children, their children in Russia, using puberty blockers or medical transitioning techniques. You know, I would say that you said you used the term, this individual is without support.
Yeah.
Now, I've made. That is the government's solution to this. You know, destroying, devastating children with confusion and distorting their realities. And then the solution is then to kill them.
Yes.
You know, we look at all these policies, and we might not like to use them, and we don't use the term, I think, appropriately enough in Canada. But all of these policies, you know, going back a long time, whether it's abortion, whether it's contraception, whether it's same-sex marriages, whether it's the COVID jabs, whether it's the trans promotion, these all have a cumulative effect of that is very much akin to eugenics. That
Yes.
it is eugenics.
Yes, you got the right term there.
You know, we condemned Nazi Germany for engaging in medical experimentations under the name of improving their society. It was you know, and I think that's we have come to believe. I saw a study, a survey just recently, that over 30% of Canadians believe that MAID is an appropriate solution for people who are homeless or living in. So that's 30% of Canadians who are willing to admit that they believe it's worthwhile for the state to commit social murder because someone may be homeless or impoverished.
Yeah.
That's an indictment on us as much as it is government. So, you know, so podcasts are one thing, but history has shown us, to be out in public, to be out on the streets, to use your voice in the public square. The court of public opinion is at the end the highest court in our land.
Mm-hmm.
Government courts can't enact anything without the public's consent. So, and I just see a comment here about Maine being for organ harvesting. Yes,
No.
Canada is also engaged in the full practice of what we used to condemn the Communist Party in China for, of organ harvesting. Maine is being used as a profit center as well, without question. But yes, if you want to make a difference, you have to have a voice. You have to be willing to speak loudly and clearly, and you have to be visible. You are not going to, as much as I like doing podcasts with you, Jason, and many other people, it is it should be viewed singularly as a stepping stone to encourage people to be out on the streets, out at the tip, out at the principal's office or their child's classroom, and say what they mean. Call a spade a spade. When the teacher says they want to bring a trans sing-along teacher into their classroom, you say, no, you're not.
Right.
This is my. You are not going to indoctrinate my kindergarten school with a trans sing-along storytelling about homosexual behavior or any of it. Okay, that this is an institution of learning knowledge, not of sexualizing our children.
Right. Right, and the whole sex conversation should have stayed at home. That's where you should have learned that. You should have been educated on that one at home. Were you for or against bringing sex ed into school back in the 80s or so?
Well, it wasn't a big, it was often disguised as well. Listen, they had sex ed in when I went to elementary school. We started sex ed in grade 6.
But it was a little bit different back then.
Well, yeah, it was just a course on how to engage in sexual promiscuity or sexual position. It was a factual relaying of the biological function of male and female organs, and so, like, okay, well, and I think that was an appropriate age frame to start doing that. Boys and girls were starting into puberty, and the school and the classroom would explain why are you starting to grow hair under your arms, and why is your voice, and all those little things to help people become aware of what the changes are that's happening in your body. But they didn't show us books on how to perform fellatio on one another and to engage in sodomy, and it certainly wasn't, and that there's no place for that. No place for that in education system.
Yeah, no, and I think maybe the flip might have back then. Yeah, the flip might have been we used to educate to help them understand, but nowadays we're asking them to tell us so we understand, like the adults. So is what I mean by that. So we used to teach the kids what all this confusing stuff was, so we would help them understand it. You're going through puberty, you're having feelings, you're being attracted, you're not quite sure yet. But we were teaching them how to understand what was going on. Now the roles have been flipped. We're asking the kids to tell us what they are so we can understand what they believe they are. And I think that's incredibly dangerous. I don't think there's any society ever that thought asking children to take the lead was a good idea. Do you see it kind of that way as well?
Well, you know, you're being far too diplomatic.
Okay.
This is a this is this is our government and our institutions and our education system grooming children, grooming and perverting children. Okay? And you know, and I saw, you know, in my episode on the Scuttlebutt Lodge, the political parties use their youth wings for grooming. Like anybody who goes to a political event, if they're awake, if they're alert, if they actually look and see what's going on, you will be horrified at the sexual proclivities, the sexual activities between the upper echelons of the party brass and the youth wing. Like
Really?
they are grooming our children to understand that if you want to get ahead in life, that you are nothing more than a sexual object for the others to take advantage of. And it is a horrendous what you know. Now that's not to say that everybody in the youth wing has been sexually terrorized, but a great many of them have.
Wow. Why don't we hear about that one? Like we hear altar boys and stuff, so out of faith we hear it, but why are we not hearing it out of the political side? Like why is nobody coming forward? Are they just programmed? They're indoctrinated like all the way?
This is just like the, you know, the term in the mafia is omerta.
Omerta.
Omerta. You know, there's a reason why the mafia, you know, sometimes people don't adhere to that code of silence. But if anybody wants to rise through the ranks of the mafia, you adhere to the code of omerta. The same thing with any organization, Jason. That's why it took many years for things to come out about the Catholic Church. Right? The code of omerta. The political parties definitely have a code of omerta that that you know, and anybody who wants to climb within the political hierarchy, or anybody who wants to benefit financially through contracts with the government or the political parties, will remain silent about the wrongdoings that they see because they know. Like, you know, for me, I don't care. I don't care for a government contract. I don't care if I see or have any dealings with government ever again. Right? But you know, but that is the exception to people in politics. You know, when I'll give you this little example. I called up when I was getting a real beating in the press and whatnot back in April and May. I called up a bunch of my former colleagues who were no longer in politics, and I asked them to come out and support my initiative because I knew that they had the same feelings as I. Well, the first one, I won't say the name, but the first one I called, he said, "Yeah, I agree with you, Randy, but you know, I've been appointed to the chair of this government agency, and if I said anything about this about COVID, they would not renew my appointment, and I'd be out $250,000 a year." Then I called up another fellow who was a former leader of the party, got along well with, and I said, you know, would you? I know that you're opposed to this. Would you come out and defend me and say something nice? And he said, you know, I'm the head of this lobby group for this particular industry, and I'm getting paid $300,000 a year. They require me to have access to the premier. I can't go against the premier on this. So no, Randy, I'm not going to help you. And everyone that I went through, federal and provincial, refused to be honest. They would all bore false witness for their incomes. And And that's omerta. Like
Yeah.
that's I've often said, if you want to understand how the political party operates, it's an organized crime.
That's disturbing and sad. Oy. I do have a bunch of questions for you here from the chat. I kind of held them off, and I do apologize because we're running late. I know I said 2 hours, but do you mind if I steal a little bit more of your time to get through some questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Randy. I'm sorry, I'm just absorbing some of this because I think my naivety about how government can work has just been cold watered. Very sad. But let me get to these questions. I think there's some really good ones here. So I got it, chat. So go ahead, Padge. I got this. Question for Randy from John Patterson. From his experience in organizing political groups, how does he identify those who are committed, those who are not supportive, and those who cause disruptions within the group? So you must have had some volunteers in your campaigns, and you've been working with stuff. So how do you know who's committed, who's not supported, and who's a disruption within the group?
Well, that I learned early in the Lanark landowners and the Ontario landowners. You
Gotcha.
can tell somebody the quality of person by their actions, not their words. So if somebody was willing, if somebody said, I'll come out to demonstration and I will do X, Y, and Z, and they do X, Y, and Z, then you know that they're committed.
Mm-hmm.
If
Okay, we may have just lost him. We give him a few more moments. I think you're coming back. I hear crickets again. Okay, Randy, I think you're back.
Okay.
Yeah, so we got the committed, and then you broke out. So if we judge you by your actions, if you do it, what you say, you're committed, and then you start to break up.
Yeah, but if somebody says that I will do this and they don't show up and they don't do it, then you know they're not committed.
Mm-hmm.
If there's an individual who is only critical and also does not do any actions, then you know that they're a disruptor.
And then critical, but with actions is somebody like you and I.
Yeah.
Right. So those
Judge
are
a person, not their words.
For sure. And I think John subscribes to that. He is that type of person. And he's got another one here. And that's, he may have a couple from John. Interesting comment right now, Randy, about political manipulation and vote rigging within parties. Oh, sorry. This is more of a statement, not a question. But he's agreeing with you about political manipulation and vote rigging. Actually, when you were talking about that, I was curious. Did you watch the Maxime leadership? And do you think that one was rigged? Did you watch that one?
Every leadership campaign.
Everyone is picked. Okay. So it's even. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I believe you. I believe you, Randy. I don't drink, but I might have a drink later. Michelle Starkley asks from Facebook, and I believe it's one of your Facebook fans, does the PPC even have a future as Max seems to be unable to secure a seat? Ooh, that's a good question because we had the election last night and he didn't win. Do you think the future for the PPC is in jeopardy because Max couldn't get a seat? Or do you think there might be another chance here in Calgary next month?
Well, listen, the people put too much stock in the leader. Okay. Let me give people a little bit of a quick history lesson. The first Reform Party member elected was not Preston Manning. It was, what was her name? Deb Gray from Alberta.
Okay.
She was Reform Party. It was a while before Preston got elected. And, of course, the PPC has a future. The future is, of course, dependent on many variables that we can't all define right now. But, one of the things is convincing and encouraging the electorate to reject the idea of a tribal partisan contest and judge people. Elections, representative democracy should be a contest of ideas,
right?
in a contest of integrity, not a tribal partisan game. But this is going to take a while for us to unlearn the bad habits. But I would also say to that individual, I believe the people who voted yesterday in Hillier was about 40-some%.
Yeah, it was a low turnout.
So, and even in I think in the last federal election we had about 58%, 56% of the people voter turnout. Like if people who are concerned about our future and concerned about their families, concerned about their communities, actually put their smartphone down and got off the couch and became engaged and measured their candidates, become knowledgeable of who their candidates are, then yeah, that's a winning formula. But until we get there, we don't have a winning formula for integrity or honesty in our governance.
Well, Alberta was the first to send reform, so maybe Alberta will be the first to send a PPC as well. So we'll be paying attention to that election next month, that's for sure. I do have a few more questions here, so I'm going to try to get through them quickly for you so you get back to enjoying Scuttlebutt Lodge. Gov Corrupt asks, and he's an anarchist, so you're going to get along with him just fine. Where does Mark Carnett fit into all of this? And I hope I'm saying that right. Mark Carnett. Does that name ring a bell to you?
I'm sure he's referring to Mark Carney, the former bank and the former Bank of the UK bank, I would imagine. And it's very likely, he's a very big ESG and diversity, equity, and inclusion and climate change influence. Not as big as Larry Fink at BlackRock,
right?
But he's. I suspect that you will see him as leader of the Federal Liberal Party at some point, and he will bring a great amount of money and influence and prestige in the media to his leadership when that happens.
Oh, wow. Okay, Gov, I hope that was the question you're looking for there, bud, or the answer you're looking for. So you're expecting him... So you expected him right after Trudeau, or do you think it might be a while? Like he may have his time in the future, but not now? What are you thinking there?
His time will be dependent on the party. If the party sees that Justin is in a position where he may cost them power, then the party will orchestrate his removal and orchestrate the Mark Carney, unless some other better, in what they view, better candidate becomes available.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that one. Thank you, Gov, for that one. He has another one here. It's more of a statement, I guess. And if you can't talk to this one, Randy, just say thank you. Gov says, I remember when the police wrote Randy a ticket for disobeying public health orders in May 2020. He was one of the first politicians to call the nonsense out for what it was. I guess you remember that?
Well, my very first ticket that I got was November 26th in 2020 on the grounds of the Ontario legislature. I remember it well. I had done a number of other protests earlier, challenging Doug Ford and the government to charge me, but didn't charge me until November of 2020.
Jeez. Is that still pending, or you paid it, you're fighting it, or is that something we can't get into?
Well, in addition to my charges in Ottawa, I was originally charged with about 25 counts of disobeying the mandates. About a dozen have been withdrawn, including that one. That was withdrawn, Ronald. I still have on July 26th and July 27th, my constitutional case against the mandates will be heard in the Toronto courts. So I'll be in Toronto on July 26th and 27th. And should I be successful in arguing that these were unconstitutional, then a great many other charges should be dispensed with as well.
And that should be for a lot of people. You'll set some precedents with that.
Yeah, if we get there, if we win, I think are good. I think the circumstances in that I was an elected representative and different elements of the case put it in a different regard than many others.
Right, because you're a representative, so you have some rights there.
And I had certain rights entrenched and understood and privileges as an elected member that were being
Can we get you back when you're done that? So that'll be late July, early August. Maybe we can find some time to see how that went for you either way.
Yeah, I'm going to be testifying July 26th and 27th. I have no idea how long the case will actually go on for, and then of course how long it will be before the
decision comes out.
The decision comes out. But I'll always be happy to talk.
Awesome. And I think let me just go double check here. And I want to say hi to your son Russell. I think Russell's listening as well. I've met your daughter Chelsea, but I haven't met Russell yet, but I've heard about him and he's watching this one. So hey Russell, nice to meet you. We have a really good question here. Would you join the federal PPC?
No.
There you go. RF. No.
I've decided to leave politics. I believe that it's better for me to try to educate and individuals about politics and instill and protect families right at the moment. I don't see a political solution on the horizon soon. As much as I'd like to see Max win in Portage Lisgar or any of the PPC win, and it will be necessary and it will be a breath of fresh air to have a voice for freedom in our House of Commons and who is not cajoled, coerced, and whipped by the grass and the lobbyists. It's not going to be a solution for a while.
And what about mentoring? I guess suspenders, independent. Do you think you can start mentoring or at least providing some advice to the next generation of politicians who don't want to play that game and don't want to get involved in that game, or even who weren't selected by them to be part of the party? Do you have any inkling to kind of provide some advice to us? Yeah, because we don't have any. We don't go through political science. We don't do any of that stuff. So I'm learning a bunch from you right now today. So that's wonderful.
I helped a young man up in Northern Ontario who ran for mayor, who was a like-minded individual of us, and gave him some, and he won in the last municipal election. There's absolutely, that is, I think, a more valuable use of my time and my experience than being engaged directly in the public arena.
Yeah, no, I think you have a good mold and you can help other people understand it. It will be different. Like I'll have slightly different, but I think you have a nice mold and I would be very interested to spend more time with you on that. I'll be checking out a lot of your videos. I've checked out a few of them over the last week, and that's where I picked up that false witness statement, and I attached that right away because not a lot of people talk about false witness and what it is and why it's one of the 10 sins. It's a very, very dangerous thing. Sorry, I'll let the screen thumb comment go up, and then I'll get to the next question. I'm trying to get you out of here by 30 minutes after, so I'll hurry up here. Ashley asks, Brendan Leslie literally has a plan to limit fertilizer due to climate change. Farmers who voted for him voted to decimate their own livelihoods. So Ashley's absolutely right. She's referring to the 30% fertilizer reduction that's being pushed down from the federal government. I actually have some history on this one, Randy. So when that came out, my neighbors are all farmers. And of course, I'm running for Yellowhead, Alberta, which is a lot of farmers. And that was one of the number one issues that people were talking about around here. So I reached out to the Agriculture Canada. I reached out to the scientists and I said, hey, look, we just want to know why you came up with the number 30. Can you explain to us where this 30% comes from? Because my neighbors are very concerned that it's an arbitrary number, that it means nothing, and it's going to reduce yields if you just add an arbitrary amount to it. The response I got out of the federal government was, you know what, we can look into that, but it's too late. You should have asked that question a long time ago because it requires us to collect that information. And I said, well, can you postpone your request for proposal period because you're not giving us enough time to review the information and respond? And they said, nope, sorry, you should have made that request earlier as well. Now, my complaint here isn't so much that I got stonewalled by the Agricultural Canada from one of the scientists. My complaint is my member never asked for it. Nobody else asked for it. Had they asked for it, it would have been produced and been available for me to collect it, because they made it very clear to me that nobody asked that question. That's why they don't have a document ready. So we have the shadow minister for agriculture here in Alberta. We have a conservative MP for me here in Alberta, but they're not asking these kind of questions for farmers. How do we get them to move? Because I even reached out and I said, hey, you need to ask this question. Got no response from the Conservative Party here in Alberta, any of the members, until the day after the close of the request for proposal. Both of them started putting out on their socials how they were displeased with this government move, but they waited until the request for proposal was closed, or request for comment. Sorry, I keep saying proposal. Request for comment was closed. And then they started to push that issue, but not to do anything about it. So how do we motivate our MPs that we've selected, or not, but there are MPs? How do we motivate them to actually pay attention to us? Because it sounds like that's not something that they're doing in the parties. Should we stop trying, or is there something that we can kind of do to get our messages?
Yeah, you have to understand how the government co-ops and how the political parties co-opt industries and constituencies in this endeavor. So, we can say right off the get-go, we know that there is a great big climate change industry and lobby group. Yeah. And there's a lot of that are involved with that see this as a way of making money. And whether it's the guys who are building windmills or solar panels or the car sequestration, whatever. There's a Volkswagen just got $1 billion for a battery plant here in Ontario. A great amount of money on the climate change program. And so this happens the way it happens in Ontario with the Ontario government, the way it happens with the federal government. The government funds our farm organizations. The Canadian Federation of Agriculture, our provincial government funds our Ontario Federation of Agriculture, the big ag groups. Those organizations who ostensibly are to represent farmers are bought and paid for by the government. They get millions of dollars in funding each year. They don't represent farmers. They cow to the government and can continue to get money each year. So the government comes and says 30% reduction. Maybe they came and said, we want a 50% reduction in nitrogen CFA, Canadian Federation of Agriculture. And we want you to support it. We want you to support this initiative. And these guys was, we really, this is bad for the farmers. But if you make sure our funding keeps going, we'll settle at 8%. You get a win, we get a win, and they don't, and then they go out. We want to reduce this going for you. So you send us some money as well because we're defending your interests, Mr. Farmer.
Right.
It's all bullshit as well. It's all theater. and everybody gets screwed except the people that we don't know who's going to get the who's going to be the next Volkswagen and who's going to be the next Stellantis,
Right.
who's going to get money out of these programs. But our food costs will go up, our yields will go down, and the standard of living will continue to shrink as fewer and fewer corporations take an ever bigger piece of the pie that we produce.
And you know the name Stellantis, and I'm sure you're aware that Stellantis is the reason why the EA was invoked. We actually got testimony of the POEC to that from our Deputy Prime Minister / Minister of Finance. She made it very clear that they had a direct line to her, and she moves when they call. And she was also very concerned about external global investment in Canada. So she's very, very globalist on that one. Go ahead.
No, they all have a direct line to government.
Yeah. I want to know that phone number because I think that's the number that makes things happen. I don't know what that phone number is as a citizen, but they have it.
It's dependent on the size of your bank account and your willingness to use it.
All right. Well, I think you gave me a path forward. I'm going to become a rocket builder. I'm going to make $1 billion, and then I'm going to go fix Canada. I think that's what you're saying. That's how we do this, Randy.
Well, if we know we've used these terms, we often haven't understood what the depth of the meaning. But everybody's heard the term "money is the grease that turns the political wheels."
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's also the engine as well.
Yeah. Yep, and it's the fuel, and it's the cause, and it's the evil, and it's the whole bunch of things. There's a whole bunch of things we can go down with money. Randy, I didn't manage to get everything in today, but I'm going to respect your time, and I'm definitely going to want to bring you back probably after you've testified, maybe if you have some more information on some of those matters, or when you can start talking about stuff like everything. When those other issues are opened up and we can go ahead and talk about them, I'd love to have you back on those as well.
Yeah, I'm not expecting my criminal charges to be heard probably until the summer of 2024. I have a change of venue application that's going to be heard in September. To
be a while,
and that's another reason why it's difficult for me to be engaged in the public forum of politics when there are court orders prohibiting you from speaking about certain things. But I'll be happy to speak with you again after the constitutional matter is heard and when the decision comes out. And in the meantime, if anybody else has one of questions, go to nomorlockdowns.ca, book some time on and come up and visit at Scuttlebutt Lodge. Have a beverage and talk.
Yeah, you got some availability coming up this summer? People can come to your, Okay, we just put your website up there, nomorlockdowns.ca or .com? CA, there we go. Yeah, we got it there. So there you go, everybody. There's the, if you have some more questions, and actually one more snuck in, and it came from your Facebook, so I'm going to make sure it gets up. I want to respect your audience here. This is Rick Laird. Randy, I have a few questions. You mentioned subjects you can't speak about. Ooh, let's be careful here, Rick. Is your court case done? Nope, we just spoke about that. This is restriction of speech, absolutely, and bail conditions or part. Oh, is this a bail condition or part of your sentence? You haven't been convicted and sentenced, right? You're still fighting everything. Is that correct?
That's correct. These are just allegations.
Right.
So these bail.
And to be clear, bail conditions is an agreement between you and the court in order to free you, correct?
Well,
or are they forced? Like they kind of make you consent to that, don't they?
Yeah, there's
with your broken arm, by the way.
you're being held in a concrete holding cell. You've got a 2-prong cord to a phone. You cannot hear anything that's happening in the courtroom, and you don't know what's happening. Yeah, was there consent? Well, it was a very loose understanding of consent, and
Absolutely.
there was
We call that duress.
yeah,
Yeah, it was under duress. He
mm,
did it for sure.
yeah,
And you're wise enough to know that these bail conditions, these are just an attempt to get you other charges. So you have to be super careful with those.
yeah. The whole process. The whole legal process is there's two objectives of it. It's not to protect society from a dangerous individual. There, the first objective is to silence me from dissenting against God.
Hmm.
Um, the second objective is to bankrupt me.
Right.
That so that I will be used as an example to put in front of other people if they destroy me financially. That this will be the result to others if they dissent against
Absolutely.
government.
Yeah. Then the punishment is the process. Like just being charged is enough to cause a lot of costs and stuff. It's called conditional. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to take the chat back here. And then the last part of the question was, how can they justify denying you the right to free speech? Isn't that a constitutional right? So let's educate some people here, like Rick, on what our rights for free speech are, what notwithstanding clause is, and what they do anyways. Because this would have been under duress consent. So to tell Rick, it is a constitutional right, but you had to, I'm going to use the word forced to, agree not to enforce your right. Correct there?
Well, yeah, there's if there had not been consent, I probably would still be in jail.
And
Uh,
talking to a wall freely.
um, and then remember that was in April of 2022. I might start to, but now June of 2023. Um, so um, it's very likely that just as there's 4 individuals in Coutts, Alberta,
Yeah, I'm about to get to
who
that
have
one.
since February of 2022 without trial and without bail. So, these are, and maybe if I did not have a wife, if I did not have children, if I did not have grandchildren, if I, um, um, you know, uh, prepared to lose my in assets, yeah, I maybe not have consented and remained in jail, but
Right.
um, that's a pretty big price to pay. That would be not a price that I would just have to pay, but my family would have to pay as well.
Right. Right. And that's how they get you. And this is how they do a lot of this stuff. They leverage the things you love, care about, and protect. That's what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
really horrible. Well, I want to let you know, the Coots guys, I'm looking into that. So I've made that a project and a mission for this next little bit, is to look into this in more detail. There's not many people talking about the Coots situation. The press is kind of ignoring it. So
and we know from the inquiry that those firearms were planted. All right, that came out quite clearly. And still, these 4 individuals, regardless of of anything else, and and I don't know all the details and whatnot, but but to hold somebody for a year and a half without bail, knowing that at least some of the evidence against them was concocted and planted by law enforcement, um, should cause everyone in Canada to be outraged. But we're seeing this. People like Eric Snowden, Julian Assange. The people who have brought forth to the public the skullduggery and the dishonesty of our governments and our institutions, and who have paid a dear price in consequence. Most people in the general public are at best apathetic to those who are putting their life career on the line for an honest society.
Well, let me be bold, Randy, and let me tell you about a book I wrote. It's coming out. I think it'll be available Canada Day is what we're shooting for. It's called, sorry, maybe my camera is. It's called Bearing Witness. The title is The Ethical, Legal, and Practical Guide to Recording and Sharing History. I wrote this book, Randy, because I wanted to teach people how to use their cameras and how to use their eyes and how to use their ears to go ahead and be witnesses. There's an entire chapter about whistleblowers, Snowden's in there, because those are some of the ultimate witnesses. These are people that see things and report things, even at their own peril. So this book is about how to educate people to become good witnesses and get out there, witness the world, record the world, and report the world. And I just wanted to let you know that because the motivation around this book was false witness. So when you said that word, I'm like, okay, this guy understands what a false witness is. And it's really important to educate people how to be good witnesses so that we can at least have a better chance at recording some of this stuff and reporting it. The idea is I want to empower people to be witnesses that will go to things like Storytime Hour and make it a little bit uncomfortable, make it a little bit uneasy because there's going to be a witness there who could be credible. They know how to take things down. They know how to record information and they know how to report it to the proper authorities or even within the legal system. And I do want to highlight, we don't have a justice system in Canada. We have a legal system. And those are two different things. But anyways, so what I'm trying to do is motivate people to become better witnesses and report it. Do you think we're lacking that in the society? Do you think culture needs people that are bold and stand up and they won't become just bystanders and watch situations, but they'll actually do something? And do you think that's a value and a benefit to this war on the culture that we're going through?
Well, there's a couple things. I think certainly it's a worthy endeavor. It's also for anybody entertaining the political field, writing a book, even if you don't publish it, writing your own book and interrogating your own thoughts is a really, really good practice. Right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you ought to be really, really knowledgeable about what you and why you're getting into politics, and you need to. There's no better form of thinking than writing, in my humble opinion.
Right.
We use the term innocent bystander, but a bystander who witnesses a travesty, witnesses an injustice, and remains only a bystander is no longer innocent.
No, they're conspirator.
They are a party to the offense.
That's right.
Yeah, that is again part of that corollary of freedom is the responsibility in society that when you see an injustice happening against another, you do have responsibility, a moral responsibility to not just be a bystander, but to limit that injustice that is happening to others.
Absolutely. And I do believe the cameras and that live streaming is what really saved the convoy outcome. It could have been even worse. I believe that narrative would have held stronger. I believe Canada would have been even more against it if it wasn't for the cameras that were capturing the real events and streaming that. And I also believe, Randy, that's why we have C11 now. C11 was in response to the fact that they couldn't control that narrative because witnesses were streaming that live. And it became a difficult thing to corral that narrative. But am I off in left field on that one, or?
Well, no. But I was just going to add the European Union, in the United States have enacted, are in the process of very similar laws to C11.
Everywhere, yeah, everyone's getting C11s, everyone's getting C4s, everyone's getting C21s. They're all getting them.
this is a Western world phenomenon. This is why, this is a cultural war at its heart, as well as an economic war.
Mhm.
We so yeah, we have been destroyed the citizen journalist, the responsible citizen.
Mhm.
And, this one of the great hopes of the internet was this a reinvigorating of um, a broadening out of thoughts and ideas and viewpoints.
Yeah.
And our governments and our institutions and our corporations are doing everything possible to stymie and suppress that.
Or control it. Like give it
the
to you. Yeah.
The whole idea of a responsible citizenry is an affront to government, our institutions, and our corporate interests. They do not want a responsible citizenry.
I'm going to answer Molly's question right now that's on the screen. She asked, we the people need to find the book that they are all reading from the puppet government. It's right here, Molly. You can go pick it up. It's on Amazon. Klaus Schwab's wrote it. Thierry Mullet or whatever helped him write it. So Molly, go ahead and get that one. It tells you everything that they're doing, at least from that stage. And then there's another book after this one called The Great Narrative. So Molly, pick those two up. Sorry, they have to pay for them. But if you want to know what's going on, those are the two books from Molly. Are you familiar with those two books there, Randy? From Mr. Schwab?
Oh yeah,
Professor Schwab?
There's many, because there's not just two competing. We have a den of and a nest of vipers in, and there's the Larry Fink, there's the Bill Gates, there's the Fauci's. Robert Kennedy has done some marvelous work as well, and has put it to so there are more than two dangers out there, and far more than just two powerful influencing narratives in the Western. There is the intersection of the eugenics movement, the climate change movement, the
gender transition, or the gender industrial complex, or the transgender industrial complex.
And that's all intermingled in with the attack on faith and family, and then and what underlies it most is the supremacy or the desired supremacy of the U.S. dollar and the fear of the rising power of the BRICS alliance as well. Like there's a lot of different elements that are at war with us at present time.
So was 1984 Orwell fiction or fact?
Well, like these were great authors. The people, these were the how prescient people like Huxley and Orwell and even Atwood and these individuals who could like that's a difficult thing to look off to 50 years from now and make a credible story of what may be happening and what happened here. All those authors, elements of what they warned us of have true.
Right.
Atwood with the fertility, with the Handmaid's Tale, Leslie with the drugs, Orwell with the Big Brother. Like these things are, you could possibly say with justification with credibility, that they were all correct.
Yeah.
None of the complete story, but they all got part of the story. But they all saw, no matter what, it all ended up in an authoritarian dystopia that people believed that they were people who were controlled and without freedom, thought that they, well, it's sort of like what Schwab has said, you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy.
I think that's the saying he just told his children one Christmas. It worked, and now he's telling the rest of us, you'll own nothing and be happy. Well, Randy, on that note, I am going to let you go because I want you to enjoy the rest of your evening. I would love to be sitting there with you, maybe having a beer and just chilling on your porch there in your little sanctuary of honesty. One day, Randy, I'm going to make my way out there and say hi to you, okay?
But you're always welcome, and we always enjoy good company and good conversation here at the camp and everywhere else. So look forward to chatting again. Thank you to everybody who's been watching tonight. Tune in to Scuttlebutt Lodge episodes if they want to hear some more tales from the dark side of politics, or join us for a beverage.
Absolutely. And that sounds wonderful. And I agree with you. It's an attack on family, faith, and futility. So we're going to do what we can to reverse some of that around here. So thank you very much, Randy. You have yourself a great evening. Thanks for doing what you could to get on. And I really appreciate it. One of the people I've been looking up to for a little while here, Randy. So thank you very much for your time.
Been a pleasure. We'll chat again soon.
You take care. Thank you very much. All right, folks, let me get that graphic off the screen. That's Randy. Faith, family, and futility is under attack. The government is completely controlled. Even the leader debates, the leader elections are not real, and everything's selected. I know Kevin's sitting over there in Quebec going, duh, like this is so obvious. But to some of us, Kevin, we're take a little bit longer to wake up. I have a lot of faith that there's still some truth and honesty in the system. Okay, because I have to. I'm running for office. I have to have some faith that there is some truth and honesty. But I do know it's a very tough road. It's very, very tough when you are independent. And as Randy said, it's even very tough when you're in the party. He entered the party, and the party said, "You are too much of a maverick for us. So how about we give you a cushy desk job?" And he said, "No, I'm here to represent. I'm going to represent." So whether you like it or not, I believe I'm a good candidate, and I think I should be doing this work. And notice he didn't call it a job. It's not a job. It was work. He was doing work, because that's different. A job is, somebody's paying you to do something, and the work, you could even do that for free. That's why I volunteer and stuff. But work is when you actually have a passion and you want to do something. So it's very clear that he wanted that, and his neighbors agreed with him. So good on him for getting in there and being a thorn in the side. And it's very sad to hear that Conservative Party leaders like Doug Ford and stuff like that can act like a 14-year-old child. It's very, very sad to hear that. Retaliatory, do what we say or else. That's all sad to hear. He was very nice about the PPC, though. So he did say parties a lot. But near the end there, he kind of isolated a little bit the PPC as being a little bit different here. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I like that. And I do want to make sure that you guys understand that when I do these interviews, my goal is to meet these people. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm practicing for my career. I'm practicing meeting all types of people, and I'm practicing different types of conversations. I can interrogate, I can let them lead, I can drive them, I can guide them, or we can just sit back and see where it goes. I'm practicing all of them. And I'm saying that out loud because I'm getting a lot of people hitting me up on Twitter, which is wonderful, asking for questions and stuff like that. I'm going to do my best to get the questions asked that I can get in there. But my primary focus here is to learn who these individuals are, pick their brain, and learn stuff from them. And it might be a little bit selfish on my part, but that is my purpose here. My purpose here is to get better at interviewing, learning how to talk to people of all types, all the way across the spectrum, all types of opinion, whether I agree or not, because these are the characteristics and skills that a good MP should have. So I'm building those and developing those. So I thank you all very much for sending me your questions, but your best bet to get the questions onto the show and to the guest is to jump into the live chat. Put it into a live chat, and my question lady, which is my wife, and she's pretty cool at this, she'll pull them out. And if you really want to get it to me, do exactly what some of you did. You've said question for Jason or question. When you do that and highlight it as a question, it makes it far more likely that it will get onto the show. So I'm giving you all the tips to get the questions to the guests, because this is the way we're functioning. I'm doing my best to interview them, because I have lots to want to learn from them, and then I'll do what I can to get your questions in as well. Please put a lot of comments. So if you're still on Randy's page or my page, put a bunch of comments in. And if you're on Randy's pages, Facebook or YouTube, give me a follow, give me a like. Go ahead and find me. It's Jason Lavigne MP, and you can see it's there listed there. Yeah, go give me a subscribe. Help me out there. There's a big audience on Facebook for Randy, so I'd really appreciate if you guys could swing over and say hi to me. I'm live streaming on Rumble, Odyssey, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And I was also streaming today to Randy's Facebook and LinkedIn, or sorry, Randy's Facebook and YouTube. So thank you very much for setting it up, his IT guy, Michael. If you like it, clip it. Remember, we're got no problems with you clipping any of our videos and sending them out. What we are doing more and more of, because it's very time constrained, is we're doing time-coded clipping or jumped links or whatever you want to call them. It's where you find the spot in the video, you select the clip, and you put the time code in it. That allows people to say, hey, go to this point, watch it, it's pretty cool, and then they can jump around the video and do whatever they want. But if you like it, go ahead and clip it. Please be my guest. Join our Discord too. There's conversations going on there. This is where we meet behind the scenes. I will share videos. I'll share guests. I'll tell you who's coming before I tell the rest of the world. So it's a good conversation there. So definitely go and check that out. Make sure that you, I really like it when you guys do the live chat. So yeah, we'll get a new graphic there. But when you're doing that live chat, that's wonderful. That helps the algorithm, that helps the conversation. And if you get questions in there, you'll get them onto the screen. I got a couple little last questions here that I wanted to address. First one's my buddy, John. John, it's Jace here, buddy. He said, hold that thought, RE law enforcement and its modern day motives. If Jace puts me on his show, I'll give you the modern day reality of policing from the inside perspective. John, you have an open invite to be on the show. Okay, so you also have my email address because we've emailed a few times. So if you want to be on the show, let's figure out how we want to do this. My challenge is I'm already booked through June or July, like into July now. So it's gonna be tough to pick a day just for you. But what we can do, John, is maybe bring you guys together, you, other chats, and other people together that had a bunch of questions and want to talk about stuff specifically to me, like not necessarily to a guest, but you have questions for me. So John, what we're formulating, and there's a couple people I've spoken to about this, is I'm going to switch the chairs. I'll have some people interview me, and John, if you want to be one of these people that will ask me questions and I'll sit in the guest seat, I'll move to this side. Okay, I'll sit over there and answer all your questions, John. So if you're into that, let's go ahead and start planning it out sometime in July. And we'll ask Jason whatever you want. That might be a way to do this, John, because you have excellent questions. And maybe I have to be a guest, and maybe you have to ask those questions of me. What do you think there, John? And then Hannah, yeah, I think that's right. Are you aware of what's going on with the Fort Coots guy? I'm definitely getting into it, and I'm very, very disappointed in myself for not picking that one up sooner. Because holy smokes, 470 days or 471 or something days now of no justice. So I've put out a call on Twitter. If you go check out my Twitter, again, it's Jason Lavigne MP. You'll find me on there. And there's a call out for people to pass me information. If you have contacts, if you're one of the lawyers and you want to be able to speak, you have documents, you're a witness, maybe you're a whistleblower. Reach out to me. I've opened up my DMs on Twitter for this purpose, so you don't even have to be followed by me to go ahead and contact me. So if you're one of those people out there that has information, you know something, or you just want to give me up to speed on it, please reach out to me. I'm putting together a little team. If you're on my Discord, that'll be even better because we'll be putting together a particular thread for this. But I saw this and I said, okay, I wanted to let you all know that Coots is one of my missions this year. I have 3 missions. So one of them is to help Kelly get elected down in Calgary, because I believe getting a PPC member in is a very good thing. The second one is the Coots situation. And then the last one is my run as an MP. So I'll be focusing on those 3 things, trying to do what I can to assist. My heart goes out to the Coots guys big time. There's something really, really, really weird with that one. And I don't have that inside track yet. So if you're familiar with it, you have connections, find me on whatever platform you want. But Twitter is a good one to get messages directly to me. And then we'll go ahead and get into that one a lot more. I did want to give you guys a heads up on some more guests that we have booked. So the rest of this week, it's going to be our Canadian relay tomorrow. So for those of you who are new and don't know the show, every Wednesday we get together. We start on the East Coast and we work our way all the way to the West, where we have different Canadians come on and give us an update from their region. So for example, we have Morgan, who is the girlfriend of Jeremy McKenzie. She's gonna be joining us tomorrow, and she'll be doing the Nova Scotia one. And she's done some sleuthing, and she's bringing a guest who's looking into the health policy that the Nova Scotia government's trying to bring forward. So it looks like Nova Scotia is attempting to take control of their healthcare system, which will be wonderful. So we'll be hearing from her. So that's an example of what we're doing. And she'll be on for about 20 minutes. She has her guest. And then we move over to Quebec and then Ontario and move our way across the country. So check it out. It's pretty cool. And thanks to Kev, Gov Corrupt, he gave me a wonderful recommendation or suggestion for the show. And we've now called it the Canadian Relay, because what it means is Nova Scotia will pass on to Quebec. So there'll be overlap between the guests as they pass on some information and pass on and relay. So we'll be relaying across Canada. We have 8 regions covered right now. We're trying to get the 9th one, which is the North, covered. It's difficult to find people that are able to make it, but if you're in the North anywhere, any of the territories, Yukon, Northwest, or Nunavut, hit me up and say, hey, I want to be on your show. I can represent the North, and we'll have a chat. But you do have to kind of follow your local politics and let us know what's going on. It works best that way. Thank you. So we have that tomorrow. Thursday, we have Herb Powell. So if you're on Twitter, you know who Herb is. He's out there. He's a bit of a anarchist / activist / not a troll. He's definitely not a troll. Incredibly intelligent, and he has some of the best tweets out there. Second only to Kevin, of course, right, Kevin? Then on Friday, we have Chris Sky running for mayor. Very boisterous, very he's got lots to say. He's got lots of opinions. He's got some ideas. Some of them are really, really interesting, and some of them I have to learn, because I don't know all of his policies and stuff and his ideas yet. But he's been great with his time. And to the people on Twitter who don't like him, don't come. Okay. Don't come. I will absolutely interview people that all of you who are watching right now like and don't like. That's going to happen. Because again, like I'm trying to explain to everybody, I need to practice the entire spectrum of the type of people out there. So there are going to be people on here that I don't even like, but I definitely am interested in talking and learning. So I'll be on there. Chris Guy, put on a shirt. LOL. Well, I put on my suspenders for Randy, but I don't think I'm going to copy Chris. I don't know. Get this chest out there. You want to see a farmer homesteader's chest? I'm a nerd, and I'm also very pale under this shirt. So probably not. Then we're going to take you on to Monday. So Monday the 26th, we're going to have Dr. Mackus. So Dr. Mackus is a doctor from Edmonton who had his license taken away because he's speaking out about vaccine injuries and vaccine itself, the troubles from it, the problems with it, and a lot of the information that he's dug up through his own research and through following patients and sudden deaths. He was one of the first ones in Canada to start showing how there was a whole whack of young doctors who just suddenly died. So he's going to talk about that. We're going to have to be careful because these are the topics that are still very difficult to talk about online, but Dr. Mackus will be here on Monday. And if you're on YouTube for that one, just have the Rumble link ready. Okay, just have that link ready because you may have to jump over there, but we'll let you know. And then on the 27th, we have Chris Erickson, another Twitter guy, very large following. But what's really cool about him is a highly politically aware person. He understands the political systems, kind of like Randy here. He's out in BC and he does a lot of work in that front, but he's also just coming out with some new Twitter spaces for the purpose of mental health awareness, and mental health assistance. So he's doing great work when it comes to helping people and giving them places to go to and hang out, have a space. So we'll be talking about that on 27th, and I'm very proud of him on that one. Wednesday, the 28th, will be the same thing. It'll be Canadian Relay, a lot of the same guests and some different people. On the 29th, we have a gentleman by the name of Tom Pace, and we're trying to possibly get a couple filmmakers to join him. This will be a conversation about Dr. Jordan Peterson. These are people who kind of know him well, and the documentary filmmakers are I believe they're a couple, so a husband-wife team, who's made a documentary on Mr. Peterson, or Dr. Peterson. Apologies, I've been doing that all day today. Dr. Peterson. So that episode's likely going to be around him. The 30th, this is one I definitely want you guys to put into your calendar. So this is a lawyer from the U.S. Her name's Gabrielle Clark. She is a lawyer who goes around ensuring that children who want to transition back have the ability to do that. And she also does conversion therapy, and she does save lives. She has lots of stories about lives she saved by doing conversion therapy, coaching, and counseling. That activity here is completely illegal in Canada because we have C4. So her actual activity in the United States is illegal in Canada. I don't have a Canadian lawyer that can talk on this because, again, it's illegal in Canada. So this is our first guest from outside of our borders because this topic is incredibly important and we can't talk about it. So we're going to. So that'll be the 30th. We'll be ending Pride. Well, I know it's Pride season now, but this particular month is Pride Month, and we'll be ending Pride Month with a little bit of cold water about the actual pain and suffering of children who are going through the transition portion. It's not pain and suffering before that, it's pain and suffering after. So you're going to be hearing that. I've invited Dr. Peterson to that one. I haven't got a response to that. On Monday, the 3rd of July, we have Tracy Wilson, who's a gun rights advocate, a property rights advocate. She works in Ottawa, and she's going to be joining us and explaining to us about C21, the work that they're doing, and maybe try and explain why they're not doing enough. They're not doing enough. They're taking small steps when a lot of people would like to see big steps. So we'll be talking to Tracy about that. On Tuesday is another really interesting episode. So he's a Canadian now, but he grew up in Venezuela. His name is Daniel. And his story is watching a tyrannical government take hold of the country he's in for a second time. He left Venezuela for that. He's watching it again. So he's going to show you, and he's going to tell you, and he's going to do the comparison of Venezuela to Canada and how we're walking the exact same path that they did. And it won't take a genius to understand that the economy collapsed, hyperinflation set in, and they are suffering down there. So, canary in the coal mine, does he recognize things other people are not recognizing? Stick around for that one. That'll be on the 4th, Independence Day. Well, for the States, but still Independence Day. So we'll be hearing from Daniel. And this is going to be a special episode because I have a co-host for this one. So Kevin, Gov Corrupt, who you probably see in the chat, he'll be co-hosting that episode. So it's going to be me and him because we want to get out all the information. We don't want to leave anything on the table. So we're going to make sure that Daniel has all the time and we get all the questions out. So stick around for that one for sure. It's going to be an excellent episode. And then we have the Canada Relay again on Wednesday. And then on Thursday the 6th, this one is penciled in. It's confirmed, but because of her employment, she may have to change. This is Bridget Belton. So she is the one who took the video of being denied crossing the border, being harassed by the Windsor police, I believe it was. We'll get into those details. And she took a video and put it out there. Yada, yada, yada. Emergency Act was invoked. So we're going to figure out from her perspective, from her first person perspective, how did this all roll out? She was part of the convoy. She was a leader. things split up, a lot of things happened. So we'll be hearing from Bridget herself on that one. Friday, the 7th of July is an excellent episode. We're going to have Chris Deering and Maggie Hope Braun. So Maggie Hope Braun. These are the two activists who were assaulted, beaten, pushed to the ground. Maggie had a gun put on her, pointed at her. She had her face put into the snow. There's video of this. This is not speculation. This came out in the POEC. And Chris, he's a vet. He was injured. He's a disabled vet. He was thrown to the ground, lost a medal, completely roughed up. We heard some of their POEC testimony, but we'll be hearing the stuff that they couldn't get into or they weren't even asked. So that's the purpose of my series on the POEC witnesses. I'm reaching out to all 76 of them, Prime Minister included, and I would like to interview them all. I'm definitely getting a lot more response from one side than the other side. But yeah, so we've had Tom Marazzo on, so you can go see one of those videos. It's in my little archive there. We had Jeremy McKenzie on. He was another witness at the POEC. So we're going to have Bridget, we're going to have Chris, we're going to have Maggie, and there's more. I won't get into the details of the rest yet because we're still ironing them out, but that takes you all the way through the January 7th. So stick around to the show. If you're new to the show, we have amazing guests. I am so lucky to get so many yeses from people like Randy. So go ahead and check out my backlog as well. There's quite a few interviews there. Maxime Bernier, we had a nice interview with him right before the election. Kelly Lorenz, we had a wonderful interview with him. And if you don't know who he is, he's also a vet who's fighting for Canada in the PPC party, and he's running in Calgary on July 24th. So yeah, go ahead and check out my backlog and stay tuned for what's coming up. So hopefully you like that. The audience seemed to have stayed. A lot of people from Randy's side of stuff stuck around, so I really appreciate that. Go ahead and give me a follow on Facebook. Give me a follow on YouTube. Give me a follow on Twitter, and I'll keep you up to date. And as you heard, we're going to have Randy back again, too, at some point in the future to give us some updates on what he's doing. Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate that. It's an extra hour on this episode. That happens sometimes around here, especially when the conversation is just too good to interrupt or move along. Randy had a lot to say, so I really appreciate that. And Hannah, give me a like. I see your name there. You're on YouTube. I would like to see you as a subscriber. So if you're on not on my page, go ahead and do it. And then John says, sounds like a good deal, Yellowhead Yacht Club. So John, you got my email, jason@yellowhead.vote. Hit me an email, and maybe we'll get this Q&A of Jason going. And John, maybe you can be one of the question asks. All right, folks. Well, thank you very much. It was a wonderful episode. I got to get back to my family. It's late here, but I'm going to go do that right now. So thank you all very much. And remember, God bless.